Welcome to English Speak Pulse, the podcast that helps you turn English learning into real-life confidence. I'm Danielle, your fluency coach and English speaking guide. And today, we're exploring one of the smartest, easiest, and most powerful ways to improve your English, through podcasts.
And I'm Sarah, your English practice partner and pronunciation buddy. You know, millions of learners listen to podcasts every day, but only a few actually know how to use them to speak fluently. Most people just listen passively, hoping their English will improve, but the real secret is learning to interact with what you hear.
Exactly. Imagine learning English while walking, cooking, or even traveling. No textbooks, no boring grammar drills, just real conversations that sound natural, interesting, and alive. That's what podcasts give you, English that breathes.
But here's the big question. How can listening to podcasts actually make you speak better? What's the difference between just hearing English and really absorbing it like a native speaker? And how do you turn a simple listening habit into your most powerful learning tool?
That's what we're breaking down today. From smart listening strategies and pronunciation practice to real-life English you can use right after the episode, we're giving you the complete roadmap to learn English with podcasts.
So grab your headphones, find your focus, and let's turn your favorite podcasts into your personal English classroom, where every word, every sound, and every story helps you grow.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep into your sources to tackle something that, well, it feels like a puzzle for so many English learners. What is the real secret to fluency? Because if you've been trying to learn, you've heard it all right. Grammar books, vocab lists, those language apps. But the material we've looked at, it really challenges that whole approach. Our sources are suggesting that genuine fluency, where you stop doing mental gymnastics and just talk, it doesn't really come from memorizing rules. It seems to come from making English, part of your everyday life. Just there. And the tool our sources point to again and again, podcasts, simple podcasts. They can kind of transform English from this thing you study into a world you just live in. And they're everywhere, right? Cleaning, commuting, working out, just chilling out.
That's exactly it. And our mission today, it's not just to say, hey, listen to podcasts. We want to get into the why. We need to really understand what makes this format so uniquely good at building those natural English skills, the rhythm, the speed, that gut feeling. Things textbooks just can't capture. So we're laying out how to actually use this really powerful, almost effortless learning tool.
Okay, let's unpack this. So this deep dive, it starts with something I bet a lot of you have felt. You know the grammar, maybe ace the quizzes, but then a native speaker talks fast and suddenly, poof, you're lost. Why is there such a huge gap there between the book learning and, real life?
Well, that gap, it's fundamentally about sound. Classroom audio, it's often slowed down, super clear, maybe a bit robotic, frankly.
Yeah, they're very clean.
Exactly. But real English, it's different. Podcasts throw you right into conversations moving at natural speed with pauses, people talking over each other sometimes, real energy, real emotion. It's messy.
And that messiness, maybe that's the point, because real spoken English, it's built for speed, not always for perfect clarity. It's full of these blended words and contractions, things that save time for the speaker but can totally trip you up if you learned mostly by reading. Like you learn, I am going to the store, perfectly proper,
right.
But what you actually hear is, I'm going to go, or even simpler. Did you eat becomes one?
No.
Like one sound, jeet.
The jeet, yeah. And that's what we could call the contraction wall. Your brain is trained on, did you eat? 4 distinct units, but your ear gets hit with this single fused sound, jeet, and your brain goes, hold on, translating.
Yeah.
Does not compute. And by the time you figure it out, the conversation's moved on.
Okay, but hang on. If podcasts are that fast and messy, isn't that just going to confuse people, especially beginners? Shouldn't they start with something, slower, easier?
It sounds logical, right? But the sources actually argue the opposite. If you only train on slow, deliberate audio, your brain gets kind of hooked on that artificial pace. What's fascinating here is that regular exposure to natural speed, even if you don't understand everything at first, it trains your ear differently. You start to bypass that word-by-word translation. You begin recognizing those blended sounds like gonna or jeet as single chunks of meaning. You react automatically instead of mentally diagramming the sentence. It's about building auditory expectation through repetition. You hear gonna 100 times, and your brain just starts to anticipate it when someone's talking about the future. It's not conscious recall anymore. It's absorbed.
Absorbed. I like that. And that absorption, that leads to what you called English intuition, right? That feeling inside that tells you something sounds right or wrong. Not because you remember a rule from a book, but just because you've heard it that way 100 times. That's the goal, isn't it? Speaking like a person, not a textbook.
Exactly. And connecting this to how our brains actually learn, the sources bring up something really powerful. Our brains learn so much better when we're relaxed, not stressed out about getting it right. Think about it. When you're actively trying to memorize grammar rules, you're using effortful short-term memory. It's hard work. But listening while you're walking or driving or doing dishes, your brain is calmer. It allows your subconscious to just soak it in, to link the sounds of English to the context, the feeling, the environment around you. That's what they mean by effortless learning. You're not cramming. You're letting this constant stream of natural language kind of rewire things naturally, making it stick long term.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that feeling. Sitting with a book, tense, worried, am I doing this right? What's the rule again? It's stressful, but with podcasts, that pressure just evaporates. English stops feeling like this scary subject you have to conquer. It becomes more like, I don't know, just hanging out with people talking about stuff you actually find interesting.
Right. You might laugh at a joke, get lost in a story. And English is just the way it's happening. The anxiety fades. And that is the fertile ground for fluency. Because true fluency, according to these sources, it isn't really about having a massive vocabulary or talking super fast. It's about comfort, feeling relaxed, being able to express yourself naturally, clearly, without that constant mental filter in real situations. If you're comfortable, the words tend to just come.
We actually had a great anecdote from a listener in the source material. She felt totally stuck, trying to master verb tenses for ages. Then she made just one small change. Listened to podcasts about historical mysteries for maybe 20 minutes every morning, just listening, not studying. And within a few months, she said everything improved. Her listening got sharper, her pronunciation felt more natural, and crucially, she started thinking in English without trying.
That's such powerful evidence, isn't it? It shows that consistency, even in small doses, is way more important than cramming complex grammar rules. You don't need these huge study marathons, just 20, maybe 30 minutes of consistent, focused listening and, importantly, enjoyable listening seems to be enough to start making those neural changes happen. Which leads to some really practical advice. Pick topics you actually care about. If you force yourself to listen to something dry just because it's educational, you'll likely give up. But if it's about your passion, travel, cooking, sports, whatever, your mind stays hooked. And when English connects to things you feel strongly about, things you enjoy, the sources say that information gets tagged as important, you remember it.
Okay, let's talk about a key difference here. Why podcasts specifically? Why are they potentially better for this kind of learning than, say, watching movies or YouTube?
Because video is great, obviously, but it demands your full attention, right?
Yeah.
Your eyes and ears. You usually like to sit down and watch it. Exactly. Podcasts, though, they slip into the gaps, the commute, the workout, folding laundry. They don't demand your eyes. That makes them incredibly easy to integrate consistently. You remove the excuse of, I don't have time to sit down and study. This helps build that crucial listening stamina.
Listening stamina, like a workout for your ears.
It really is. Think of it like a fluency gym. When you first start, maybe you only catch 50% of what's being said. It feels like noise sometimes. But the sources are clear. Keep showing up, keep listening consistently, and that comprehension jumps pretty quickly. 70%, then 90%. Your brain adapts. It learns to filter, predict, and follow along, even with faster speakers.
And here's where it gets really interesting, connecting back to that emotional side. Podcasts don't just give you words, they give you the music of the language. The rhythm, the tone changes, how speakers stress words for emphasis or emotion. The difference between saying that's amazing flatly versus that's amazing.
Yes, that emotional contour is vital, and you pick it up subconsciously just by hearing it over and over.
You also learn those subtle things, like how shifting stress changes meaning entirely. Like if someone says, well, that was helpful, meaning the exact opposite. You only get that from hearing the tone.
Precisely. And the sources suggest a really active technique to tap into this. It's called shadowing.
Shadowing.
Yeah, it's basically mimicking. You listen to a short phrase or sentence, pause, and repeat it immediately, trying to copy everything, the words, the speed, the intonation, the emotion. When you practice shadowing, you're not just learning words, you're training your mouth and brain to produce the sounds and rhythms of natural English. It helps you break out of that more robotic, monotonous delivery that learners sometimes fall into. You start to sound more alive, more natural.
So if we pull this all together for you listening, Podcasts kind of let you shortcut the traditional learning process. They mimic how we learned our first language, right? You hear it constantly, you absorb it, you start to imitate it, you react to it, all before anyone makes you sit down with a grammar book.
It's endless exposure without the pressure, without the judgment, just immersing yourself in real, natural language.
So if you feel like those grammar drills and vocab apps just aren't getting you to that comfortable, natural place you want to be, maybe try shifting your focus. Try weaving podcasts into your day. Start small, maybe just 10 minutes with your morning coffee. The idea is to stop treating English like a subject you have to study.
And start living it,
Yeah.
making it part of your lifestyle. When it becomes the background music to your day, that's when fluency really starts to take root.
Right.
And maybe a final thought for you to take away. When you're listening, try to really engage. Don't just let the sound wash over you. Feel it. If the hosts are laughing, smile along. If they say something surprising, react in your head. Try to imagine you're actually there, part of the conversation. Let your brain believe that English isn't just something you study, it's something you live. Because that deep, almost subconscious connection, that's what makes fluency stick for good. Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know, if you're learning English, you've probably felt this frustration. You know the grammar, you've got tons of vocabulary, but then, boom! A native speaker talks normally and it just dissolves.
Yeah, it sounds like this one long, messy stream of words.
Exactly. It's like, where do the words even begin or end?
It's a super common roadblock, and you feel lost thinking, wow, they talk incredibly fast. But today, well, our mission is kind of to unpack that. We're looking at the research you shared, and it suggests reframing the whole thing.
Okay, how so?
It's less about just hearing words and more about training your ear, really tuning it to understand the natural speed, the tone, the music of English.
Right. And the experts immediately challenge that core idea we have about speed being the problem.
Yeah, that's the big misconception. The speed itself isn't necessarily the issue. It's more that the learner's ear is, well, let's say untrained for that specific frequency.
Untrained. Explain that a bit.
Think about tuning an old radio, maybe. When you first try to find a station, it's all scratchy, fuzzy, right?
Lots of static.
Exactly. But you keep tweaking it, you stay on that frequency, and slowly the signal gets clearer, it locks in. Listening to natural English is pretty much the same process. You need that consistent exposure to lock it in.
That's a great analogy. Because starting out, your brain is just desperately searching for those neat little gaps between words. That silence.
Which just doesn't happen much in real conversation.
Right. Words link up, sounds get reduced, and yeah, it sounds like one massive sentence. So this ear training, it's about teaching your brain to pick up on those common patterns, those reductions, so it can decode the stream almost automatically.
And we really should start with a classic example of reduction, because this is often where that kind of aha moment happens for learners.
Okay, let's do it. That famous one.
Yeah. Take a simple phrase like, what do you want to do? Now, if you ask a native speaker that casually,
It comes out sounding totally different.
totally, you often hear something like, what do wanado?
What do wanado?
So the learner hears that, scans their mental dictionary, and finds nothing. There's no entry for what do wanado. So cue the confusion.
They think it's some new word they've never learned.
Exactly. But, and this is key, after hearing that sound sequence again and again, maybe in different contexts, the brain suddenly makes the connection. It links that fast, reduced sound, what do wanado, back to the full phrase, what do you want to do?
Ah, okay. That click.
That's the click. And it proves it's not about excessive speed, it's about natural, connected speech.
Right.
Once your ears start adapting to how those words naturally blend and reduce, suddenly, whole chunks of conversation that were confusing before they make sense.
That makes perfect sense. But getting there takes actual effort.
Right.
Which brings us to the first big shift we need to make. Getting away from just passive listening.
Oh, absolutely. We all do it, don't we? Put on some English audio in the background while we're doing chores or working out.
Guilty as charged.
And look, it does something. It keeps English kind of buzzing around you. But the research is really clear on this. It's just not enough if you want to seriously develop your listening skills and speed up your comprehension.
Okay, so if passive isn't enough, what makes listening active? What's the actual difference?
Active listening means you're properly tuning in, you're focusing not just on the sounds themselves, but on how people are actually talking.
How they talk. Like,
Which words do they stress? How does their voice go up or down to show emotion or ask a question? How do they link words together smoothly? You're basically looking for the underlying structure, not just the surface meaning.
got it. So let's make this practical. What are some concrete things listeners can actually do today? Maybe start with that 30-second clip technique.
Yes. That one's fantastic because it's such a direct workout for your ears. You pick a really short audio clip. 30 seconds is great, keeps it manageable.
Prevents overwhelm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Step 1, just listen. Listen a couple of times through without stopping. Just absorb the sound.
And crucially, don't panic if you don't understand it all first time. Right.
Definitely not. The first listen is just about getting the feel, the rhythm. Then, step 2, play it again, but this time, try to write down everything you hear.
Ooh, that sounds tough.
It can be. Even if it's just jumbled sounds or bits of words, write it down. You're forcing your brain to process the audio into something concrete.
I imagine the first attempts might look pretty messy.
They probably will. But then comes step 3, the magic part. If you have a transcript, you check what you wrote against the real text.
The comparison.
Yes. And what's amazing is the connection your brain makes. You might see you wrote Gatago and realize, oh, that corresponds to I've got to go. You're actively correcting your hearing against the written form. People are usually shocked at how much more they catch after just a few tries.
That's where those little breakthroughs happen. Okay, what about this idea of listening with intention? You mentioned that as a way to avoid getting bogged down.
Right, because if you try to listen for everything, pronunciation, new words, rhythm, accent all at once, it's just too much. You'll likely get frustrated.
Makes sense.
So the experts suggest thinking of it like targeted exercise. You work different listening muscles on different days.
Okay, give me an example. What would a focused day look like?
So maybe Monday, you decide your only goal is to focus on pronunciation. Perhaps you pick one tricky sound, like telling V and B apart in fast speech, or maybe that English the sound.
Just zoning in on that one thing.
Exactly. Then Tuesday, maybe you ignore the words and just focus purely on the rhythm and the melody. Where does the voice rise and fall? Wednesday, maybe you're hunting specifically for new phrases or idioms you haven't heard before.
I like that. It stops your brain from getting overloaded. And there was another related idea, selective listening, which sounded kind of fun.
Yeah, selective listening turns it into a bit of a game, which helps keep you engaged. You pick one really specific tiny thing to track through a whole piece of audio.
Like what kind of...
Could be anything. Maybe you decide you only pay attention to the verbs used. Or you could listen to an interview and just track how many questions the host asks.
Or, getting into that really natural stuff, you could track conversational habits.
Perfect example. Count how many times the speakers say common things like, I think, or, or maybe that filler word, actually.
We'll use that one.
We do. The point is, by giving your brain a specific target, it has to stay active and filter the audio stream instead of just letting it wash over passively.
Okay, so we've talked about words and sounds, but you mentioned earlier the importance of the overall music of the language. Let's pivot to the stress, the rhythm, the tone. These carry so much meaning, don't they?
Oh, huge amounts. Some say almost half the meaning in spoken English comes from these nonverbal elements. Every sentence has its own kind of melody, and once you start hearing that melody, your understanding really jumps up because you get the emotional context too.
There's a really good example in the materials about how stress and rhythm help you understand. Can you walk us through that one?
Sure. Imagine you're listening to, say, a wellness deep dive, and the host says, staying healthy isn't about perfection, it's about consistency.
Okay.
If you're listening actively, you'd notice how they probably stressed isn't about perfection, maybe with a slightly higher pitch, and then they likely slowed down a bit for emphasis on the key takeaway. It's about consistency.
Right. The rhythm changes to highlight what's important.
Exactly. That rhythm gives you clues about the critical information, making it clearer even if you didn't catch every single word around it.
And we can't discuss rhythm without talking about pauses. The sources called them golden. Why golden?
Yeah, golden because they're like little signposts for your brain. They signal a shift in thought or the end of one idea and the start of another. Think about this. A beginner might hear a fast speaker say, well, I guess you commented that, but I'm out of work.
Just one long blur.
Right, a blur, and they get lost. But if you train your ear to catch those tiny natural breaks...
Then what do you hear?
You hear, well, pause. I guess I could try that. Pause. But I'm not sure. Pause, it'll work. Suddenly, that fast speech is broken down into 3 manageable chunks of thought. Learning to notice those pauses makes even quick English much easier to follow.
And focusing on this rhythm and melody isn't just about understanding better, is it? There's a link back to speaking, too.
Absolutely. They're two sides of the same coin, really. As you get better at recognizing the natural music of English through listening, you'll find yourself starting to mimic it when you speak.
So your own speaking starts to sound more natural.
Exactly. You absorb the rhythm and intonation from what you listen to.
Okay, so to really train the ear properly, it seems like variety is essential. Just listening to one person isn't enough.
Definitely not. You need wide exposure. If you only ever listen to, say, one type of American accent, your ears get kind of locked into that one pattern.
Right, you become dependent.
Yeah. And that's why podcasts are such a great resource. You can easily find shows with British hosts, American, Australian, Indian accents. Challenging your brain with that variety is crucial for flexibility.
I remember reading that story about the listener who'd only ever consumed American English content.
Oh, yeah. And then they tried listening to a British English deep dive for the first time and basically panicked.
That was a different language.
Pretty much. The different vowel sounds made them think they were hearing something completely foreign. But the interesting part is, after just 2 weeks of deliberately listening to British content every day, their brain adapted. It started to click. Your ear just needs that initial push to adjust to new patterns.
That adaptability is so important. Another tip related to exposure was about listening to shows with hosts and guests, not just solo speakers. Why is that interaction important?
That's vital because it exposes you to real conversation dynamics. You hear the natural give and take, the polite ways people might interrupt or signal they want to speak, how they use those little filler words like, actually, or I mean, to manage the flow.
Things you don't get in a prepared monologue.
Exactly. It's crucial for understanding how conversations actually work in practice.
It kind of loops back to how kids learn their first language, doesn't it?
It really does. Kids aren't studying grammar rules in a book. They're just listening constantly. They absorb patterns through sheer immersion and repetition. Their brains figure out the structure naturally over time. You can mimic that process by surrounding yourself with lots of varied, interesting English audio.
Okay, which leads us nicely into the final, maybe most important part. Mindset. Patience. Dealing with that anxiety when you don't understand everything.
Yes, that anxiety can be paralyzing. The biggest piece of advice here is psychological. Try not to panic if you miss words. You really don't need to catch or translate every single word as it flies by.
What should you focus on then?
Just try to get the main idea, the key nouns, the main verbs. Trying too hard to translate word for word in real time is often what causes that mental logjam and makes you miss the next sentence entirely.
And it helps to know there's a reasonable goal, right? You don't need 100% comprehension immediately.
Absolutely. The sources suggest that if you're understanding around 60 to 70% of a podcast or conversation, that's already really good. You've likely grasped the main points.
That's encouraging.
It is. And trust that with consistent listening, that percentage will climb towards 80%, 90% over time. Think of it like your eyes adjusting to a dark room, understanding improves gradually, then suddenly things become much clearer.
What if an episode just feels impossibly hard? Is one listen enough?
No way. Repetition is your absolute best friend here. If a clip or an episode feels tough, listen to it again, listen tomorrow, maybe listen again next week.
Seriously. Replay the same thing.
Seriously. You will be amazed at how much more sense it makes the second or third time. Phrases that felt like gibberish before start to sound familiar. Each repetition strengthens those neural pathways, locking in the patterns.
And underlying all this technique is enjoying it. The emotional side matters.
Hugely. If you actually enjoy the content you're listening to, maybe it's about a hobby or history or comedy, your mind relaxes.
And when you're relaxed.
That's when the real effortless learning happens. You stop trying to brute force the English into your brain, and you just let yourself absorb the language naturally, like music.
Okay, we've covered a ton of great strategies for training your ears. Before we finish up, let's just quickly recap the main takeaways. What should listeners focus on starting now?
Right. First big thing, shift from passive to active listening. Really focus on how people talk. Use that 30-second clip technique. Listen, write, compare. It works.
Don't forget the music.
Never. Pay attention to rhythm, stress, those golden pauses. That's the hidden structure. And definitely listen to lots of different accents and speakers to build that ear flexibility. Don't get stuck on one voice.
And remember, the end goal isn't perfection. It's not about catching every single word.
Not at all. The real goal is understanding naturally, getting to the point where you recognize phrases, idioms, even jokes, just automatically without that mental translation step.
That moment when it just flows.
Exactly. When English stops feeling like a code you have to crack and just feels normal, like a second language you just understand. That's fluency in listening, and it's totally achievable with consistent practice.
So if you're listening now and thinking this sounds hard, just remember that radio analogy. You just need to keep tuning that dial, keep listening actively, keep noticing the patterns, the music.
And one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll realize you understood a whole chunk of conversation without consciously translating anything in your head.
That's the win, that feeling of just understand.
That's the ultimate measure of success, isn't it? When that internal translator switches off.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Think about all those different ear training muscles. We talked about rhythm, pauses, specific sounds, tracking filler words. Which single one are you going to choose to focus on first, starting today? Pick one, listen actively, and enjoy the process of getting that signal clearer and clearer.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Now, if you're a regular listener, consuming English content, you've probably got fantastic listening skills. You follow complex ideas, get the jokes, your comprehension's top-notch.
Absolutely it is. That's often the case.
But there's often this huge gap, isn't there, between understanding so well and actually speaking fluently, getting the words out naturally.
That's probably the number one frustration we hear about from advanced learners.
Yeah.
Because listening, well, it's only half the picture, isn't it?
Right. Passive versus active.
Exactly. The other part, the active side, is producing the speech yourself. And if you're looking for probably the most powerful technique to really connect those two skills, your ears and your mouth, then today's deep dive is definitely for you. We're focusing entirely on the shadowing technique.
And it's interesting, our sources really back this up, suggesting it's incredibly efficient as a form of practice. So today, we're aiming to lay out exactly how this technique works, how you can use it to train your voice, moving beyond just, good pronunciation towards more native-like rhythm, tone, and maybe most importantly, that feeling of confidence.
It really is all about becoming the speaker's echo. That's the core idea.
Okay, so that's the mission then, giving you a practical path, a shortcut maybe, to achieving that natural flow in your spoken English. All right, let's dig into the mechanics first. What exactly is shadowing? I mean, the definition seems pretty straightforward on the surface.
It is, fundamentally. You listen to a short audio clip, and we really recommend keeping it short, say 10 to 20 seconds initially.
Okay, 10 to 20 seconds.
Then, and this is the crucial part, you repeat exactly what you hear while you're hearing it or immediately after. The goal is matching the speaker's rhythm, their intonation, the specific pronunciation, as closely as you possibly can.
So it's simultaneous or near simultaneous, like following right behind them.
Yes, exactly. That's why it's called shadowing, right? You're trying to follow the voice, sentence by sentence, even word by word, just like a shadow follows light. You ideally don't wait for them to finish the whole sentence. You speak with them, or just a fraction of a second behind.
Okay, but help me understand why that simultaneity is so much more powerful. I mean, lots of traditional language learning uses a listen, then repeat model after a pause. What's different here?
Well, what's fascinating, according to the research, is the sheer amount of cognitive work your brain is doing all at once. When you shadow properly, you're performing this really complex, multi-layered action. You have to actively listen intently. You have to speak. You're consciously copying pronunciation details. You're absorbing the rhythm and flow. And you're physically training your mouth muscles.
Wow. Okay.
It's like the ultimate fluency multitasking workout. And it sort of bypasses that slow analytical stage of thinking about grammar rules first.
The sources we looked at also mention this physical aspect, almost like it's an athletic skill. Can you elaborate on that, this idea of full body learning?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's definitely not just an intellectual exercise in your head. When you really engage in focused shadowing, you're using your ears intensely, obviously.
Right.
But also your tongue, your lips, your jaw. You even start to unconsciously pick up on the speaker's stress patterns and where they breathe.
Breathing too. Interesting.
Yes. You're essentially training the musculature of speech, the physical parts, to move automatically in patterns that are natural for English. And it's that combination of immediate sensory input hearing it and immediate physical output saying it that seems to make the learning stick much better than, say, just reading words off a page or silently studying.
Okay, so if it is this kind of full body learning, then theory is great, but we need a practical roadmap. Let's give you, the listener, a really clear, actionable blueprint, something you can literally start using today with any English podcast you happen to like.
Absolutely. Let's break it down. We've synthesized the best practices from the sources into basically 5 core steps for immediate action.
Perfect. Okay, step 1, choose your source. What should people look for?
Pick a podcast, or any audio really, that you genuinely find interesting. That's key. It also needs to have clear audio quality and ideally natural conversational speed.
And this seems important. The sources emphasize you don't need some special slow English for learners podcast, right?
Exactly. In fact, authentic natural language like you'd find in a lifestyle show or maybe a motivational podcast or narrative storytelling that often works best. You want to capture the real flow of English, not something artificially slow.
Got it. Natural speed, clear audio, enjoyable content. Step 1, what's next?
Step 2, listen carefully. Once you have your source, find a specific short segment. Again, 10 to 20 seconds is usually the sweet spot, especially when you're starting out.
Okay.
And just listen to that little clip a few times without speaking. Just let your ears soak up the intonation, the melody, the rhythm of the speech first. Get a feel for it.
Okay, passive listening first for that short bit. Then step 3, echo the voice. This is the main event, I guess.
This is where the shadowing happens. Play the clip again, and this time, speak along at the exact same time as the speaker, or as close as you can get. Be their shadow.
And the focus here isn't just on saying the words correctly.
Not primarily, no. Your main focus should be on matching their rhythm, their pitch changes, their intonation. Try to feel the music of how they're speaking, not just the dictionary pronunciation of each isolated word.
Right, the musicality. Okay, that leads to step 4, the crucial self-check. And we should probably acknowledge this is the step people often resist.
Oh, absolutely. It can feel intensely awkward, maybe even embarrassing at first. Record yourself doing the shadowing.
Ugh, yeah. Nobody likes the sound of their own recorded voice initially.
True. But playing back your shadowing attempt, maybe comparing it side by side with the original clip, is absolutely essential. When you hear the playback, you get instant objective feedback.
You can really hear the difference.
Exactly. You hear where your rhythm matches up well, and where maybe you sound a bit flat or hesitant, or where your pronunciation is off. It's uncomfortable, maybe, but incredibly valuable data for improvement.
It cuts through wishful thinking. Okay, awkward but necessary. And finally, step 5, consolidate. What does that mean?
It just means repeat the process with that exact same 10 or 20-second clip several more times. Don't just do it once.
Stick with one clip for a bit.
Yes. You'll probably notice quite quickly how each repetition makes your voice sound noticeably closer to the native speaker's flow and rhythm. You're essentially carving out that neural pathway, making the pattern automatic, grooving it in. And this repetition really highlights the core mechanical benefit we were talking about. Shadowing is much more about absorbing spoken patterns than it is about, say, consciously memorizing grammar rules.
Right.
You're training your ear and your mouth together to understand how English feels and sounds when it's flowing naturally. It becomes intuitive.
That focus on flow and intuition is really compelling. But let me just play devil's advocate for a second here. If I'm just repeating sounds, maybe even matching the rhythm well, aren't I potentially just practicing speaking? Well, confidently but incorrectly if my underlying grammar or vocabulary is actually weak.
That's a really fair and important question.
Yeah.
The way to think about it is that shadowing primarily trains the delivery mechanism, the fluency, the flow. It separates that from grammatical accuracy in the moment.
Okay.
So studying grammar, learning vocabulary that teaches you the rules, the building blocks. Shadowing trains the physical skill, the muscle memory, needed to deliver those blocks smoothly and quickly in real time. If you have underlying structural errors, yes, you still need traditional study to fix those.
Right. It doesn't replace grammar study.
Not at all. But what shadowing does is ensure that when you do construct a grammatically correct sentence, you can deliver it with natural rhythm and intonation. It stopped you from having those awkward pauses mid-sentence while your brain is trying to conjugate a verb or find the right word, which completely kills the conversational momentum.
That makes sense. It tackles the delivery side of fluency. Let's make this really concrete. The sources use an example phrase. Imagine a podcast host says, with real conviction, if you really want to improve your English, you have to use it every single day.
Okay, good example. Now, when you shadow that phrase, you absolutely must copy the dynamic stress the speaker uses, that emphasis on really want and the clear highlighting of every single day, that's the melody, the meaning embedded in the sound.
If you just said it flatly, if you really want to improve your English, you have to use it every single day. It loses all its punch.
Completely. It sounds robotic, unconvincing. Shadowing forces your voice, your delivery, to follow that natural English melody.
So the mechanism here, it really feels like it's building a direct bridge between your ears and your mouth, doesn't it? It seems to speed up your reaction time.
That's a perfect analogy. You're shortening that processing delay.
Yeah.
Instead of the typical learner process of hear something, mentally translate, analyze the grammar, formulate a response, then finally speak.
Yeah, which takes forever in a real conversation.
Exactly. With shadowing, your speech muscles gradually learn to respond much more instantly and instinctively to the sounds and patterns you hear.
It's like learning a musical instrument, maybe.
Very much so. Think about learning guitar chords. At first, you look at the chart, you consciously think about where each finger goes, it's slow and clumsy. But with enough practice, your fingers just know the shape. They go there automatically. Shadowing aims for something similar with your mouth eventually. It just knows the right movements, the right shapes for English sounds and common word combinations, without you having to consciously analyze every single sound. Now let's tackle a very common, very practical hesitation people have. We hear this a lot. Okay, this sounds great, but what if the speaker in the podcast is just too fast? I honestly can't keep up with that natural pace. Yeah, that's a real barrier, isn't it? Trying to shadow someone speaking at full conversational speed when you're not ready must feel overwhelming.
It definitely can be discouraging. But thankfully, there's a very simple built-in solution on practically every podcast app or audio player nowadays.
The playback speed control.
Exactly. Just slow the speed down. Try dropping it to maybe a 0.8x or 0.75x. Start there.
So you master it slow first. Precisely. Master the rhythm, the intonation, the connections between words at that slower speed. Get it comfortable. Then, only when that feels manageable and accurate, gradually increase the speed back up towards 1x normal speed. You're building the foundational muscle memory step by step.
That makes it much less daunting. Build up gradually.
And related to that, remember the principle of consistency over sheer quantity. 10 minutes of really focused, deep, intense shadowing where you're actively listening and trying hard to copy every nuance that's likely going to achieve far more for your actual fluency than, say, an hour of half-hearted passive listening or unfocused practice.
Quality over quantity. 10 focused minutes daily is better than a long, distracted session once a week.
Absolutely. We also get huge pronunciation benefits from this, specifically by tuning into the real-life rhythm of spoken English, which is often quite different from the overly careful, sometimes stilted pronunciation you might find in textbooks.
How so? What kind of things do you mean?
Well, when you shadow native speakers in natural conversation, you start to automatically pick up and copy those little shortcuts, the connected speech patterns they use all the time.
Ah, like sounds blending together between words.
Exactly that. Your mouth physically learns how sounds merge, how words link up. You start naturally using common contractions without thinking about it. That going to smoothly becomes gonna or want to, often sounds more like wanna.
Right. Things teachers sometimes tell you not to do, but everyone actually does.
Precisely. You're training your ear and mouth for conversational efficiency and speed, how people actually talk. And when you naturally start using common smooth phrases like, what you doing, instead of enunciating what you're doing or how's it going, flows out easily.
Yeah, people instantly perceive you as more fluent, more comfortable. You're speaking their language, not just reciting correct sentences.
And there's one more layer here, which is really quite fascinating, the emotional connection. Shadowing doesn't just train pronunciation and rhythm. It trains you to copy the speaker's emotional expression.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, if the podcast host sounds really excited and energetic about something, when you shadow them actively, you naturally start to adopt that same energy in your own voice.
Ah, I see.
If they sound calm or thoughtful or maybe skeptical, your shadowing voice will start reflecting that tone too. And this ability to convey emotion accurately through tone and intonation, that's something pure grammar study simply cannot teach you. It's vital for real communication.
That really gets back to the music of English we mentioned earlier. Let's try that example phrase again. I can learn to speak English naturally if I just say it flat, like a statement. I can learn to speak English naturally. It sounds okay, but weak, maybe unconvincing.
Exactly. It lacks impact. But now imagine you're shadowing a speaker who delivers that line with genuine belief and energy. you automatically start to mimic that confidence. Your shadowed version comes out more like, I can learn to speak English naturally.
Yeah, much more powerful.
That emotional weight, that conviction carried in the intonation, that's what truly connects you with another person in a real-world conversation. It makes your English interesting, engaging.
And all of this, the rhythm, the connected speech, the emotional tone, it leads to this wonderful subconscious benefit, doesn't it? Which is that your overall accent tends to improve naturally, organically.
It really does. You don't have to sit there with a phonetics chart trying to memorize the exact position for every sound.
Yeah.
Your brain, through listening intently and mimicking, simply starts to adjust towards what sounds and feels right based on the native model you're shadowing.
So those persistent little pronunciation mistakes might just start fading away on their own.
Often they do, yes.
Yeah.
Because your mouth instinctively learns the correct natural movement, the right shape for the sounds in context. It becomes automatic rather than analytical.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive on shadowing, what's the final takeaway, the practical challenge for you, the listener?
I think the main message is start small, but start today. You don't need special equipment. You don't need hours of free time.
Right. You already have the tools. Just grab your phone, pick a podcast episode you listened to recently, maybe even this one. Find a 20-second clip that you like the sound of.
Exactly. And just commit to shadowing that single clip maybe 5 times. Really focusing, really trying to match the speaker. Do that today. Don't wait for the perfect time or when you feel more ready. Fluency is built in these small, consistent actions.
5 times, 20 seconds, very doable.
Totally doable. And that small, consistent practice, done regularly, it will pay off hugely over time. Because the ultimate goal, the real magic moment we're aiming for, is this.
What's that?
It's when you find yourself in a conversation in English, maybe talking about something reasonably complex, and you suddenly realize you're not consciously thinking about grammar rules anymore. You're not translating in your head.
You're
Just speaking. Comfortably, naturally, focusing on the message, not the mechanics. That's the point where you know this kind of practice has truly worked.
That's the dream, isn't it? Just communicating freely. And perhaps a final thought for you to consider, building on what we discussed. Since shadowing really forces you to copy tone, rhythm, and that emotional expression, the actual music of English, think about this, when you're actually interacting with people in the real world, how much more important might it be to genuinely express your excitement or your humor or your sincerity through your tone than it is to have absolutely perfect grammar in every single sentence, especially with obscure rules nobody uses?
That's a great point. That emotional connection, that ability to convey feeling accurately.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a bigger part of true fluency and effective communication than we sometimes realize. Something definitely worth reflecting on.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time, we talked about the practical mechanics, training your mouth and ears with shadowing.
Right, the physical side of things.
Exactly. But today, we're kind of shifting gears. We're diving into that mental firewall, really. The thing that separates truly fluent speakers from, well, learners, thinking directly in English.
This is the core cognitive shift, I think.
Yeah.
It's that moment when learning starts to feel,
well,
effortless.
Because that translation step is killer, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Thinking in your native language, forming the idea, then translating.
Yeah.
You're just creating friction, like a translation tax, every single time.
Yeah, exactly. Your brain's forced through this extra step, and it just gets stuck like mental traffic. It slows the whole flow down. And our goal for you, listening, is that words should flow instantly, naturally, like water from a stream, not drip, drip, drip.
We're talking about moving from that conscious translation effort to something more automatic. Intuition.
Intuition. I like that.
Yeah. And the source material we looked at really highlights this. This is how we learn our first language, isn't it? We absorb context, we copy sounds, we understand meaning through experience. We don't sit there memorizing grammar rules and translating back and forth as kids.
No, definitely not. So, okay, let's lay out the mission for this deep dive then. First, we need to unpack why this direct thought process is so necessary, maybe touch on the brain science bit.
Right, the neurological side.
And then, crucially, give you concrete daily habits, things you can actually do, mental exercises, focusing especially on how audio, like podcasts, can help build this new fluent mindset.
We want to help you essentially rewire things a bit. Make English the default language for your inner life. Move from constant mental effort.
Yeah, that exhausts
To
her.
genuine linguistic flow, smoothness.
Okay, let's deepen our understanding of this flow versus traffic idea, because it's not just about being slow, right? It's draining.
It is. Think of your brain maybe like a computer server. It's running two big programs, your native language, L1, and English, L2. Now, if someone speaks to you in English and you're stuck in that traffic mode, the brain receives the L2 input, routes it over to the L1 program for thinking and figuring out the answer, translates that answer back into L2, and then spits out the response.
Wow, okay. That sounds inefficient, exhausting.
It is exhausting. It's
Yeah.
what scientists call high cognitive load, like running a really slow search query every single time you want to say something simple like, I went hiking.
Yeah.
It takes up so much mental energy just managing the switching. But the fluent speaker, they bypass that whole detour.
Yeah.
L2 input goes straight to the L2 program, processes the idea, outputs the L2 response instantly. No traffic jam.
And the sources point to podcasts as the engine for creating that direct route. How does just listening help reroute those mental pathways?
Well, podcasts provide massive amounts of repeated natural conversation, high frequency input. It's different from reading a textbook, which is often, focused on specific grammar rules you consciously apply. Podcasts train your procedural memory. That's the part of memory for automatic skills, like riding a bike or playing piano. You don't think about every single step.
Okay, so we're training the how, not just learning the what.
Exactly. You stop consciously analyzing the grammar. Instead, your brain, just from hearing it over and over, starts recognizing patterns automatically. You start to feel what sounds right.
Right.
It's like getting English immersion without having to pack your bags. The language is alive, it's natural, full of emotion, rhythm, even little mistakes sometimes.
Yeah, real stuff.
All the real elements that trained your subconscious to operate in English.
Okay, this makes sense. So let's get practical. If the goal is immediate English thought, you can't just flip a switch overnight.
No, definitely not.
We need steps, incremental habits. Let's dive into the 4 key habits the sources suggest for building this English mindset.
Okay, habit number 1, start with small thoughts. This one's really about tackling that initial anxiety. The feeling that, I can't think in English, my thoughts are too complex, or I'll just get stuck.
Right, you don't need to start by trying to think through, quantum physics in English.
Absolutely not. Keep it simple. The key is consistency, not complexity. You're training your brain's default mode. So when you first wake up, or maybe when you're washing dishes, just think simple things.
Like what?
Like, I'm tired, or need coffee, or what time is it? Just little phrases.
Yeah.
The actual content doesn't matter as much as the act of forcing that internal chatter into English consistently.
I get it. It teaches your brain to just switch tracks, like changing the default language setting, but inside your head.
Precisely. Small, consistent reps. That's what strengthens that cognitive switch.
Okay, makes sense. Moving to habit number 2, describe what you're doing. This takes us from just static thoughts to narrating actions in real time.
Yeah, this is a crucial step. It connects the internal thought to your physical reality. So you narrate simple daily actions as they happen.
So literally like, I'm brushing my teeth now.
Exactly. Or I'm opening my laptop, gonna check the weather. Simple stuff.
But hang on, if I'm just starting, won't I make mistakes in my head? Like, my internal grammar might be wrong. Isn't it safer to translate first to make sure it's right?
That's a really common worry, a valid one. But here's the thing. If you always translate first, you never train that automatic procedural skill, those internal mistakes. They're actually valuable feedback for your brain.
Okay.
And because you're also listening to podcasts regularly, getting that high quality input, your brain starts to automatically notice the difference. As you narrate, I am eating now, your brain hears native speakers saying, I'll grab a bite on podcasts, and starts to self-correct internally.
So the listening provides the correct model, and the narration practice helps you internalize it. Even with the initial mistakes, it kind of auto-tunes itself.
Exactly. It moves you away from stiff textbook phrases towards how people actually talk, without you having to consciously build every sentence piece by piece.
Okay, that leads really nicely into the 3rd habit, which feels like maybe the biggest mental shift. Using English for your inner voice, that constant chatter in our heads.
Yes, we all have it, right? That voice managing tasks, worrying, planning, what should I wear, did I lock the door, what's for dinner?
All day long.
All day long. If you can train that voice, that running commentary, to operate in English, well, you've basically created a 204/7 immersion environment for yourself.
Wow, yeah. without adding any extra study time, really.
Exactly. You're processing the world, thinking through problems, making plans, all in your target language. It's incredibly powerful.
And this is where that constant listening, the podcast habit, really pays off again, right? It feeds that inner voice.
Oh, absolutely. Podcasts are like food for that inner voice. Your mind is constantly soaking up patterns. The more authentic conversation you hear, the more your inner voice naturally starts borrowing those ready-made functional phrases. Not formal textbook stuff, but real chunks of language.
Like what sort of things?
Like thinking, oh, that makes sense, or right, I need to check that out later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These little bits make your internal and eventually external speech much more fluid.
Got it. Okay, habit number 4. This moves from internal stuff to preparing for external interaction, thinking through situations.
Yes, this is about proactive readiness. Instead of waiting for a situation, ordering coffee, talking to your boss to hit you, forcing you back into that slow translation traffic,
Yeah, that panic moment.
you rehearse common scenarios directly in English beforehand, mentally.
Can you give some specific examples? How would that work?
Sure. Think about ordering coffee. Don't translate the order in your head. Rehearse the actual phrases. Hi, can I get a large latte, please, with oat milk?
Yeah.
To go. Just run through the likely sequence.
Okay. Or maybe talking to a manager.
Right. Instead of translating, I will send the report soon, think directly. Sure, I'll send the report over in about 10 minutes. Need to finalize the numbers. You're accessing what the sources call your mental library of phrases.
And listening to podcasts, especially ones with practical dialogues, helps build that library faster, filling it with useful, ready-to-go phrases.
Exactly. Fluency often isn't about knowing a million individual words. It's more about having thousands of these chunks, these ready-made phrases that your brain can just grab and use instantly.
Yeah.
It's faster than building sentences word by word.
Okay, this framework is really helpful. But let's tackle that big fear, the roadblock you mentioned earlier, that feeling, I just can't think in English yet. I don't know enough words.
Yeah, this one holds so many people back. But it's based on a misunderstanding, I think. You don't need a massive academic vocabulary to start thinking in English.
Really?
No, you just need the right core vocabulary for your daily life. Think about a little kid learning to speak. They have a tiny vocabulary compared to an adult, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But can they express pretty much everything they need and feel? Hunger, happiness, wanting something? Absolutely. It's about functional language first.
So it's not about the sheer number of words, but about connecting the words you do know directly to concepts.
Precisely. It's about moving words from just knowing their definition, that semantic memory, to using them automatically in context, this procedural memory again. And podcasts are brilliant for this.
How so?
Because you hear words used repeatedly in different situations with different nuances. You start to understand not just the dictionary meaning, but the feeling of the word in a sentence.
Ah, okay. Like your example earlier about feeling blue.
Exactly. You hear it enough times in context, you feel it means sad. You don't need to translate blue equals sad. You build an intuition around the phrase itself. That's much deeper understanding.
That makes the whole thing feel much less daunting. Okay, let's wrap up with those 2 powerful, practical mental exercises you mentioned. Ways to really accelerate this shift. First up, label your surroundings.
Yes, this is super simple but effective. Sort of like neuro-linguistic programming, actually. Wherever you are right now listening to this, just look around and name 5 things you see directly in English.
So like desk, monitor, coffee cup, window, plant.
Exactly. But the key is, don't let your brain think the native word first. Force the direct link between the object and the English word. Doing this repeatedly helps rewire your brain to retrieve the English label first, instantly.
You're training your visual system to connect straight to the English word, bypassing translation.
You got it. And the final exercise is about engaging more deeply during listening, active listening and visualization.
Okay, how does that work?
So when you're listening to a podcast, maybe even this one, pause it occasionally and then actively process what you just heard in English. Ask yourself, okay, what was their main point there? Or what exactly are they talking about?
And the crucial part is resisting that urge to translate it back into your native language to check understanding, right?
Absolutely resist. Force your brain to grapple with the meaning using only English. Try to guess from context, summarize it in English in your head. Build that intuition.
And the visualization part.
After listening to a section, close your eyes for a moment. Try to picture the conversation or the concept being explained, then summarize it again, in English, in your mind, but connect it to that mental image.
Ah, linking language to imagery. Makes it stickier.
Much stickier. Easier to remember, easier to use later.
Okay, wow. That really brings it all together. We've gone from understanding why we need to ditch translation.
Yeah, escaping that mental traffic jam.
To embracing intuition fueled by things like podcasts. And now we have these concrete habits and exercises.
So just to recap those golden habits for everyone listening. 1, start with those small, simple thoughts daily, consistently. 2, narrate your simple actions as you do them. Build that real-time connection.
Right.
3, the big one. Train that inner voice, that constant monologue to run in English.
Feed it with podcasts.
Exactly. 4, practice thinking through common situations, filling up that mental phrase library. And 5, fundamentally, stop translating. Start trusting your brain, especially when you're feeding it all this great natural English input.
It's about trusting the process, isn't it? Your brain is incredibly adaptable. If you give it consistent exposure through listening and you do these internal practices, it will start to rewire itself. You don't always have to force it consciously.
You really don't. And the reward was amazing. The real sign you've made this shift is when you catch yourself dreaming in English, or maybe planning your day, or even having a silent argument with yourself entirely in English.
Yeah, that's the moment you know.
That's when you know you're not just learning English anymore. You're starting to live in it.
So the message is, keep listening deeply, keep practicing those inner dialogues, and really believe in your brain's power to adapt, because ultimately, fluency isn't just about the grammar rules or the vocabulary lists. It's about shifting that internal mindset, making English the default setting for how you think. Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into a stack of research, really digging into one big question. What's the absolute best way to learn new vocabulary and actually, keep it?
Yeah, how to make it stick.
Exactly, because let's be honest, we've all been there. You learn a great word, feel smart for about a day.
And then poof, 3 days later, it's just gone, vanished.
Right. So why does that happen? These sources really tackle that head on.
They do. And the core problem, time and again, seems to be relying on traditional methods, like memorizing word lists.
Ah, the classic list. Why is that such a bad strategy? It feels like it should work.
Well, it feels efficient, maybe, but it ignores how our brains actually learn. Those words on a list, they don't mean anything in your life.
No connection.
Exactly. There's no context, no emotion, no real situation tied to them. The brain needs hooks to hang memories on, Without a hook, that word ubiquitous you studied.
Just evaporates, like smoke, as you said.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So the solution isn't brute force memorization.
It's about living your vocabulary. Is that the idea?
That's a great way to put it. And interestingly, the research points very strongly towards podcasts as, well, almost the ideal environment for doing just that.
Okay, podcasts. Why them specifically?
Because they deliver everything the brain needs all at once. You get real conversations, actual stories, genuine emotion.
So the word isn't isolated anymore.
Never. It's embedded. You hear it used naturally, so you get the meaning, the rhythm, the grammar, the feeling behind it, all simultaneously.
That multi-sensory thing.
That's what makes it natural, and that's what makes it last.
Okay, let's really unpack that. We promise you, listening right now, we're going to break down why this works so well, and then give you a practical plan, some actual techniques you can use daily.
Right. Let's start with why podcasts seem to be so good for making vocabulary stick long term. The sources highlight basically 3 key advantages over just reading.
Okay, advantage 1.
Real life context. This feels like the big one. When you read, you might get a definition.
If you're lucky. Sometimes just the word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in a podcast, you don't just learn negotiate. You hear someone say, maybe with a bit of stress in their voice, we really had to negotiate a better price for that office space.
Ah, so you get the meaning and the feeling.
And the structure. You learn, you negotiate something, it all comes together. Meaning, emotion, grammar. Instantly.
Okay, that makes sense. What about repetition? Because, textbooks might show a word once. I might force myself to write it down 10 times.
Yeah, but that's forced. It's artificial.
Yeah.
The second big benefit is natural repetition.
How so?
Think about common words in conversation. Words like actually, basically, apparently,
Constantly.
dozens of times across different episodes, different topics, different speakers. It's not forced drilling. It's your brain naturally picking up patterns because the words are frequent and useful.
So the brain wants to learn those patterns because they keep showing up in meaningful ways.
Precisely. It sinks into your implicit memory much more deeply than rote memorization ever could.
And the third benefit, you mentioned pronunciation earlier. When I learn from reading, I often have zero clue how a word actually sounds.
Right, which leads to hesitation when you try to use it, doesn't it?
Totally. I feel awkward.
So benefit 3 is automatic pronunciation and tone. Your ears just soak it up. The sound, the rhythm, where the stress falls.
How it kind of flows into the next word.
Exactly. How it lives in the sentence. Your mouth almost starts to mimic it without you even trying. It's muscle memory for sound. Reading alone can't give you that.
Can we give an example? Maybe like, okay, the word honestly.
Perfect example. You hear someone say, honestly, I didn't expect that meeting to go so well.
It's not just about telling the truth there, is it?
Not always, no. It often signals surprise or maybe a slight vulnerability. You might hear it again later. Honestly, I'm just tired. Or honestly, that movie was amazing.
So you absorb its different flavors, its functions.
Without studying a definition.
Right.
You internalize its use through sheer exposure in real contexts. It becomes part of your intuitive understanding.
Okay, so podcasts are the right tool, but using the tool correctly is key. I know I fall into traps.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest trap. The one everyone seems to fall into.
Let me guess. Pausing every 5 seconds to look up words.
You got it. Hitting pause, opening the dictionary app, breaking the flow completely.
Guilty as charged. I do that constantly. Then I forget what the person was even talking about.
It turns listening from something enjoyable and immersive into this frustrating stop-start chore. It kills the learning momentum.
So what's the smarter way? The sources suggest a 2-step approach, right?
Yes, a much more effective method. Step 1, just listen. The first time through an episode, let the language wash over you.
Even if I don't understand everything.
Especially then. Accept it. Your brain's still picking up rhythm, intonation, the general gist. The goal isn't dissection yet, it's just comprehension and enjoyment.
Okay, so resist the urge to pause, then what?
Step 2, listen again. But this time, be selective. Focus only on a few words or phrases, maybe 3 to 5.
Which ones? The hardest ones?
No, not necessarily. The ones that interest you, the ones that make you think, ooh, I like how that sounds, or I could use that.
That little spark of curiosity.
That's the signal. It means your brain is primed. It's ready for that specific word. Trying to force words that don't spark that interest. That leads right back to the vanishing vocabulary problem.
Keep it alive. Keep it curiosity-driven, not mechanical.
Exactly. Alive, not mechanical. That's the mantra.
All right, mindset established. Now for the practical stuff. The techniques to turn that passive listening and selective noticing into active, long-term growth.
Technique number 1, the keyword notebook, but with a twist.
Quality over quantity, you mentioned.
Yes. Only write down those 3 to 5 words or phrases that genuinely caught your ear on that second listen.
And here's the crucial part, right? Don't just write the word and its definition.
Absolutely critical. You must write the full sentence or the context you heard it in. If the podcast said, she totally nailed the presentation.
Write that whole sentence down, not just do something well.
Precisely. Because you're not learning a definition in isolation. You're learning how the phrase functions in context. That sentence is your memory anchor. It holds the meaning, the grammar, maybe even a bit of the feeling.
Got it. Context is king. Technique number 2.
Active recall. This taps into some powerful brain science. After you've listened and written down your few key phrases, put the notebook away.
Okay.
And try to remember them. Say them out loud, without looking.
That sounds effortful. Why not just reread my notes? Isn't that faster?
It might feel faster, but it's far less effective for long-term memory. That little struggle, that mental search when you try to recall it without prompts.
That's the magic moment.
That's retrieval practice, or what some call the testing effect. It's not passive review. Your brain is actively working to find the information. Staring at the page just confirms recognition. Forcing yourself to retrieve it and say it, that proves ownership.
Okay, I see. The effort is what makes it stick. Ownership.
Yeah, that's what locks it in long term.
So we've listened, noted the context, recalled it actively. What's next? Making it truly ours. Technique 3.
Create mini conversations. You have to take it off the page and out of your head and actually use it. Make it part of your own expression.
How does that work in practice?
So say you learned Make It Happen from a business podcast. Don't just understand it. Use it. Maybe talking to yourself in the car or just thinking it through. Okay, I need to finish this report by 5. I can make it happen.
Attach it to your own life, your own goals.
Yes. If you use it in a personally meaningful way, ideally within 24 hours, It starts to feel less foreign. It integrates into your active vocabulary.
It becomes your phrase, not just something you heard.
Exactly. And technique number 4 builds on this. Listen to the same podcast episode multiple times.
Wait, again, won't that get boring?
Not if you listen with a different focus each time. It's repetition with purpose.
Okay, how?
Maybe the first listen, like we said, is just for the story, the flow.
Get the gist.
Second listen, you're hunting for those interesting expressions, the ones for your notebook.
Focusing on vocabulary.
And then a third listen, try shadowing.
Shadowing, you mean? Repeating what the speaker says as they say it.
Instantly. Copying their pronunciation, their intonation, their rhythm. It feels weird at first, but it's incredibly powerful for internalizing the sounds and flow.
So each listen has a specific job. Story, vocabulary, pronunciation.
Right. That focused repetition turns vocabulary from a concept into an automatic skill.
Speaking of automatic skills, the sources also talk about moving beyond single words, don't they? Something about chunks.
Ah, yes, language chunks. This is huge for fluency. Real fluency isn't about knowing a million individual dictionary words.
It's about knowing phrases.
Exactly. Small groups of words that natives use together all the time, like prefabricated units. Think, take care of, look up to, get rid of, look forward to.
We don't usually think look forward to. We think look forward to as one thing.
Precisely. And the more of these chunks you absorb, the smoother your speech becomes. Your brain stops trying to build sentences word by painful word.
It just grabs the ready-made chunk it needs.
And plugs it in. That's largely why native speakers sound fast and effortless. They're using thousands of these chunks automatically.
And listening to podcasts is perfect for picking these up, I guess, because you hear them used naturally all the time.
It's the best way. Textbooks often don't highlight them, or they feel artificial. But in audio, you also catch the sound of chunks, including reductions.
Reductions.
Like how I don't know often sounds like I don't know.
Or I'm going to becomes I'm gonna.
Exactly. Those little smoothings and contractions. You only really learn those by listening, not by reading rules. It's what makes spoken English flow.
Okay, this is all clicking into place. Let's pull it together. For someone listening now, wanting to start today, what's the simple daily plan?
Okay, a simple, manageable 5-step daily plan. Takes maybe 10-15 minutes of focused time.
Let's hear it.
Step 1. Choose a podcast you actually like.
Yeah.
Something interesting, roughly at your level.
Yeah.
Fun is key.
Makes sense. Step 2.
Listen for 10-15 minutes. First pass, just focus on understanding the main points, the story. No pressure.
Step.
Listen again, maybe the same section, and pick out just 3 to 5 words or phrases that genuinely catch your ear. Write them down with a full context sentence.
Quality over quantity. Context is king. Step 4.
Later that day, review them using active recall. Put the notes away, try to say the words or phrases aloud, maybe make your own sentence with them.
The ownership step. And finally, step 5.
Re-listen to that same episode chunk after a few days. See how much more you understand. It reinforces the learning beautifully.
15 minutes a day. Choose. Listen for flow. Listen for sparks. Recall actively. Re-listen later. Seems doable.
Totally doable. And the key thread through all of this.
I'm going to guess. Curiosity.
Curiosity and emotion. Don't turn it into a chore. If a word makes you smile or makes you think or perfectly describes something you experienced, your brain wants that word.
Follow the sparks. Don't force the boring stuff.
Exactly. Emotion is like memory superglue. The best vocabulary comes from things that resonate with you.
Like those examples you gave earlier. Visualizing things.
Right. I learned play it by ear.
Yeah.
Act spontaneously from a travel podcast about a disastrous trip where nothing went according to plan. I could see the chaos. It stuck instantly.
I had that with hit the ground running start energetically from a business podcast. I pictured someone literally leaping into action. That image locks it in.
Visualization is powerful. Connect the phrase to an image, a feeling, a story.
Okay, final Goldie tip. Anything else to leave people with?
Maybe this. Review should be fun, not stressful.
How so?
Every now and then, maybe once a month, go back and listen to an episode from way earlier when you were just starting.
Oh, I like that.
Notice how much more you understand now. Words that seemed impossible back then are just normal now.
It shows you your progress. That's a huge motivator. Like rewatching a complex movie and suddenly getting all the subtleties.
Exactly. It proves the method works and keeps you going.
So the big takeaway here really is ditch the stressful lists. Embrace the flow of real conversation through podcasts.
Let curiosity guide you. Use natural repetition. Focus on context. Make it active. That's how you build vocabulary that lasts. Make podcasts your daily learning companion.
Every episode listened to, every phrase you notice and actively recall, it's like laying another brick in your fluency wall.
Absolutely. And the provocative thought to leave you with is this. One day, you'll be speaking English confidently, using these phrases naturally.
Without even thinking about it.
And you'll realize, maybe with a little smile, that your favorite podcasts, they were your teachers all along. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into something key for fluency. It's about moving past just knowing what to say in English to actually making it sound natural, strong, and, clear when you speak it. We've got a whole pile of sources you sent us, all focused on mastering that natural flow.
That really is the mission, isn't it? So many learners get the grammar, they have the vocabulary, but they still feel, awkward when speaking.
Right, like something's missing.
Exactly. And that feeling, it often comes from fighting against the natural rhythm of English. Our sources point towards using something you probably already do listen to podcasts to sort of bypass that struggle.
And we should be clear about the goal here. The sources are pretty consistent. Mastery isn't about chasing some perfect native accent. That's often unrealistic.
And unnecessary. The real aim is clarity, getting the rhythm right, and honestly, confidence. You want to sound comfortable, at ease, not like you're straining over every word.
Which brings us to podcasts. Why are they so good for this?
Well, think about it. They're basically the most accessible pronunciation coach you could ask for. A textbook might define a vowel, sure, but it can't teach you tone or emotion or stress in context.
Or how conversation actually flows.
Precisely. When you listen to hosts chatting, laughing, debating, you're soaking in the real music of English.
That music idea is so important. It's the difference between, say, hearing someone naturally say, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah, fluid, casual.
Versus the textbook version, "Hello, what is up?" Which sounds, stiff, awkward.
Totally. Podcasts just constantly bathe your ears in that spontaneous connected sound, showing how words really link together when spoken naturally, often quickly.
It's the rhythm, the melody that makes it understandable, engaging. Okay, so to help everyone listening structure this, we've pulled out 3 core elements from the sources for mastering pronunciation. What are they?
Right, we've boiled it down to 3 key areas. First, the basics, sound accuracy, getting those individual sounds right.
Okay.
Second, something crucial in English, word stress and rhythm.
The music part again.
Exactly. And third, how it all blends together, connected speech and tone.
Perfect. Let's dive into the first one then, sound accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
You said you need to train your ear first.
Yeah, absolutely. Your ear leads, your mouth follows. Every language has its own specific sounds, and some can be confusing if they don't exist in your native language. The sources mention, for instance, Urdu speakers, sometimes mixing up V and W, which are quite distinct in English, or maybe confusing ship and sheep.
The long versus short vowel thing.
Right, because that distinction might not be as critical in their first language. So listening to podcasts acts like a really sophisticated, personalized ear training gym. You hear the sounds used correctly, over and over.
It's amazing how you notice those subtleties when you really listen. The classic example you brought up, live versus leave.
Such a great example. If you're just listening casually to a story, your brain might just skim over it.
Right, you get the gist.
But if you focus in, you hear, I live in New York. That's a short, sharp sound. Kind of like and sit. But then, I'm going to leave now. That's a long, stretched out I sound. Like in seat.
I hear it now.
Hearing those contrasts repeatedly helps your ear automatically tell the difference, eventually without even thinking about it.
And then presumably your mouth starts to copy what the ear has finally grasped, which leads us to a technique the sources really emphasize. Shadowing.
Yes, shadowing. It's powerful. Basically, you just repeat exactly what the podcast speaker says right after them, or even at the same time if you can keep up.
So if the host says, "That's an incredible story," I pause and say, "That's an incredible story," trying to match everything.
Everything. The speed, the pauses, the way their voice goes up or down, the intonation.
And definitely not just memorizing words, is it? It sounds much more active. We called it language karaoke earlier.
Yeah, it's got that element. But it can feel a bit weird at first, can't it? For listeners starting out, that awkwardness, how do you push through?
That's the key question.
Well, that awkward feeling is actually good feedback. It means you're pushing your speech muscles into new territory. The sources suggest starting small. Don't try to shadow a whole 5-minute chunk right away.
Just one sentence, maybe?
Yeah, shadow one sentence. Repeat it until it feels smooth, natural. The real value is that shadowing forces you to mimic the rhythm and the tone before your brain has time to overthink the grammar. You're training muscle memory and listening skills together. It's quite fun, actually.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Start small, focus on the feel. Okay, moving on from individual sounds. Let's talk about the real engine of English rhythm, our second element, word stress and rhythm.
Right. This is probably one of the biggest differences between English and many other languages. English is what linguists call a stress-timed language. Meaning it has a rhythm, like a beat in music. Certain words get emphasized the important content, words like nouns, verbs, adjectives, while others are weak, sort of glossed over the function words like articles, prepositions.
And the classic mistake learners make is giving every word equal weight.
Exactly. That's what leads to that flat, sometimes robotic sound. If you say, the cat sat on the mat, with equal stress on each word.
Sounds unnatural.
Very. Native speakers would naturally stress cat, sat, mat, and kind of glide through the Johnny. Podcasts are just full of examples of this natural stress pattern, showing you which words carry the meaning.
And this is where it gets really critical, because changing the stress can change the entire meaning of a sentence. We looked at that example. I didn't say he stay the money.
Yes, a fantastic illustration. That one sentence can mean completely different things depending on where you put the emphasis.
So if you stress I
didn't say he stole the money. It implies, well, someone else must have said it.
Okay, but if you stress stole.
I didn't say he stole the money. Maybe he just borrowed it or found it. The action itself is questioned.
Wow. So just hearing that natural stress in podcasts helps you understand the intended meaning, not just the words.
Absolutely. Missing the stress often means missing the point entirely. It conveys nuance, attitude.
And emotion plays a huge role in driving that stress, doesn't it? The source is really pushed, mimicking the host's tone.
Yes. Mimic the excitement, the surprise, even the laughter. English really responds to energy. When you put feeling into your voice, your pronunciation sounds more authentic almost instantly, even if every single sound isn't perfect yet.
That energy, that push and pull of stress, it leads naturally into the third element, right? Connected speech.
Exactly. Because we tend to rush between the stressed words, we naturally take shortcuts with the unstressed ones. This is a big reason why English can sound so fast to learners.
But understanding these shortcuts, these connections, actually makes it easier to follow and eventually to sound more natural yourself. We hear them all the time in podcasts.
Oh, constantly. The sources highlight some really common ones you need to train your ear for. The classic is going to be coming.
Going up.
Right, or want to becomes wanna.
We also hear things like, what are you doing? Turning into what you're doing.
Yep. Or, did you eat? Becoming did you eat? These aren't mistakes or lazy speech. They're efficient, natural ways native speakers connect words smoothly.
And when you shadow these phrases,
your mouth just starts to naturally copy those connections. You feel the flow. You don't need to memorize complex phonological rules. You just start doing it because it feels right. It sounds smoother.
Connected speech. And the other part was tone or intonation. How does that fit in?
Hugely important, especially for things like questions versus statements. Sometimes the only difference is the tone.
Ah, right, like the intonation curve.
Exactly. Think about, you're coming. If I say it with the falling tone at the end, you're coming, it's a statement. I'm telling you.
Okay.
But if I say it with a rising tone, you're coming, suddenly it's a question. Maybe I'm surprised, or just confirming.
Same words. Totally different meaning based on the music.
Precisely. Podcasts are just drenched in these tonal patterns, interviews, stories, debates. You absorb that musicality that signals emotion and intent without even realizing it sometimes.
Okay, so we've got sound accuracy, rhythm and stress, connected speech, and tone. We understand the what and the why. How do we put this into practice? The sources mentioned a specific routine.
Yes, a very practical approach. They called it the Podcast Pronunciation Power Hour. Though it doesn't have to be a full hour, it's a 5-step daily routine to turn listening into active skill building.
Sounds efficient. What are the steps?
Okay, step 1 is listen actively. Find maybe just a 5 or 10-minute clip of a podcast you like. But here's the key. Focus only on how the speaker sounds. Ignore the content for a moment. What's their pace like? Where do they pause? Are they animated?
Got it. Tune into the sound, not the meaning. Step 2.
Step 2. Mark tricky sounds. Don't try to fix everything at once. Pick just 2 or 3 words or short phrases from that clip that sound difficult for you. Maybe it's a tricky the sound or a vowel you struggle with.
Okay, just focus on a couple of things.
Yeah. Then replay that section again and again. Really analyze how the speaker makes that specific sound. Isolate it. Let your ear really grab onto it.
All right. Step 3 must be
The core technique: shadow and repeat. Now you engage your mouth. Repeat each sentence, trying to perfectly match the speaker's tone, their speed, their rhythm. If they speak fast, you try to speak fast.
mimicry in action. Okay, step 4. This one sounds crucial.
It really is, and it's often the one people skip. Record yourself, use your phone, whatever. Just record yourself saying those same sentences you shadowed.
The dreaded playback.
I know. Hearing your own voice can be uncomfortable, even for native speakers. But why is overcoming that so important for pronunciation?
Tell us, why torture ourselves?
Because your internal perception is often wrong. Your brain kind of autocorrects as you speak, so you think you sound closer to the target than you actually do. The recording is objective truth.
It doesn't lie.
Exactly. It's the only reliable way to hear the actual difference between your pronunciation and the podcast speakers. Where does your stress differ? Is your flow choppy? Are those vowels really matching up? Pushing past the discomfort is where the real learning happens.
Okay, I'm convinced it's necessary medicine. What's the final step? Step 5.
Step 5 is practice emotion. Don't just say the words flatly. Try to inject the same feeling the host had. If they sounded excited, sound excited. If they were calm, be calm. English really comes alive with expression. Adding that feeling makes even simple phrases sound so much more authentic.
So active listening, target tricky sounds, shadow, record and compare, and add emotion. That's the power routine.
And taken together, this routine isn't just about fixing sounds. It's about building your unique speaking identity in English. Your pronunciation starts to reflect your personality, your confidence, not just a set of memorized rules.
That's a really empowering way to think about it. Okay, let's quickly cover some common habits that this kind of active listening and shadowing helps fix almost automatically.
Yeah, the sources pointed out a few big ones. First, that habit of saying every single word very separately, like reading, A-list. Ugh, words.
Makes sense. Podcasts force you to hear the connections, the gonna, wanna, gotta.
Exactly. Second, speaking with equal stress on every word, that robotic sound we mentioned. Instead, you start hearing and copying how speakers emphasize key words for meaning, like, I really enjoyed that,
Right.
that bounce. Third, ignoring rhythm entirely. By listening actively, you internalize how native speakers naturally bounce between the stressed and unstressed syllables. It's not conscious, you just start feeling it. The difference between I like that idea and I like that idea is huge, right? You get that from listening.
Definitely. And the last one. Seems like even advanced learners hit this.
Yes, overpronouncing. Trying too hard to articulate every single letter, especially silent ones or double letters.
Like saying coffee very carefully.
Exactly. Instead of relaxing your tongue and jaw and letting it flow more like native speakers often do, maybe closer to coffee, like, can I get a coffee? It's smoother, less effort. Podcasts show you that relaxed, natural articulation.
It's about flow and comfort, not rigid perfection. And the secret weapon seems to be imitation.
Absolutely. Pure imitation. If you find a podcast host whose voice or style you like, their accent, their pacing, even their little hesitations, just try imitating them directly.
Copy everything.
Copy sentences, pauses, maybe even their characteristic ums or ahs. It sounds basic, but it's how we all learned our first language.
Yeah.
Babies imitate sounds, not grammar rules.
That's true.
The sources suggest that even just 5 minutes a day of focused imitation can make a noticeable difference. Pretty quickly, maybe within a month, you're rewiring your brain to think in English sounds.
And you don't have to stick to one accent either, right? You can mix it up.
Please do. Listen to British English one day, American the next, Australian after that. It makes your ear more flexible, more adaptable to global English. The goal is clear communication and confidence with anyone, not mastering one specific dialect.
Which brings up a final crucial point about application. It can't just stay in your headphones, can it?
No, definitely not. The final vital step is taking those improvements out into the real world, or, the virtual world.
Oh, like actually using it.
Yes. Try out your smoother pronunciation talking to friends. Record short voice notes or videos for yourself, just describing your day. Join an online conversation group. The more you use it in real situations, the more natural and automatic it becomes. Practice really builds that confidence bridge.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. The core takeaway seems to be, ditch the idea of studying pronunciation like it's a dry textbook subject.
Right, you need to feel it through the sound, the rhythm, the repetition.
And podcasts offer that feeling, that authentic input, basically on demand.
Exactly right. Think of every podcast episode as your own private coach. Real voices, real tone, real expression guiding you. Just follow that 5-step routine, especially the recording part. Embrace the initial awkwardness.
And your clarity and confidence should really take off.
That's the path.
All right, and as always, we leave you with a final thought to chew on. Consider this: improving your pronunciation isn't just about changing how you sound. It's about making sure that when you speak English, your voice truly represents you, your personality, your ideas, your identity. That's how you really own the conversation. Until next time, on Deep Dive.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something I know a lot of you struggle with, even when your English is, technically really good. It's that gap, right, between acing grammar tests and then, getting totally lost when native speakers talk fast.
Oh, absolutely. It's probably the single most common frustration we hear about. You can write a perfect essay, maybe, but then someone says, what you going to do? And your brain just stalls.
Exactly, stalls. That's the perfect word, because you know the words, what are you going to?
But you didn't hear them like that. You heard this compressed, kind of mushed together sound. Native speech is full of connected words, slang, skipped sounds. It's a different beast entirely.
So that's our focus for this deep dive, isn't it? Using podcasts, something many of you already listen to, as a tool.
Precisely. We're looking at how to use them strategically to train two things: your listening speed, just being able to keep up, and, crucially, your thinking speed in English.
Right, moving past that need to mentally translate everything back and forth.
That's the goal. Instant understanding, instant response, real fluency.
And the sources we're drawing on today, they offer some really practical step-by-step methods. It's not just listen more. It's how to listen to build that speed and automaticity.
Okay, so let's start with the foundation. Why podcasts specifically? The sources talk about building listening muscles. What does that mean in practice?
Well, it's like any muscle, right? At first, it's hard work. You tune into a fast conversation, maybe multiple speakers.
It feels overwhelming, like you're trying to catch every single word and failing.
Exactly. But the idea is with regular exposure, like daily podcast listening, your brain starts to adapt. It gets better at predicting.
Predicting sounds, predicting words, even predicting the meaning based on the context. It starts becoming automatic.
You used a great analogy before we started learning to drive.
Oh yeah, the manual car thing.
Right.
At first you're thinking, okay, clutch down, check mirror, shift gear, ease clutch up, bit of gas. Every single step is conscious and slow.
Super slow and stressful.
But after a while, you just drive. You don't think about the individual actions. Your brain's automated the whole sequence. Listening to podcasts, especially natural conversations, does the same for processing English. It trains that automaticity.
So why podcasts over, say, watching movies or TV shows? Is it just the lack of visuals?
That's part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
It forces you to rely solely on your ears. But more than that, it's the type of audio. Podcasts often feature real, unscripted conversation.
You mean like people interrupting each other, laughing, using filler words?
Exactly. All that messy, natural stuff. You hear the rhythm, the intonation, the pauses, the way words actually blend together. Gonna, wanna, hafta. Textbooks usually give you slow, perfectly enunciated sentences. That's not real life.
Okay, so exposure to that real-life speed and messiness is key. This ties into another concept from the sources. Context comprehension. What's that about?
It's about shifting your goal. You need to stop thinking the aim is to understand every single word. Because, honestly, native speakers don't even do that.
Really? We miss words, too.
All the time. We fill in the gaps using context, tone of voice, the general flow of the conversation. If you hear someone say, I went to the, the place with the thingamajig.
You probably still know what they mean based on the rest of the conversation.
Right. You guess from the context. So for you, the listener, the skill to build is learning to infer meaning even if you miss a word or two. Focus on the key words, the speaker's emotion, the situation. It moves learning from stressful memorization to more like absorption.
Okay, absorbing the flow and the gist, not catching every drop. I like that. So how do we actually train this? You mentioned a specific routine.
Yep. The sources lay out a simple 5-step daily routine. Let's call it the podcast listening speed routine. Very actionable.
All right, step 1.
Choose the right podcast. And this is more important than it sounds.
Me now.
Pick something you genuinely find interesting. A topic you love, a host you like. Could be comedy, stories, interviews, anything. The sources strongly advise against forcing yourself through dry, boring, learn English podcasts.
Why is enjoyment so critical?
Because if you're genuinely interested, your brain is more alert, more engaged. It releases dopamine, makes it naturally more receptive to absorbing in the language. If it feels like a chore, your brain just kind of brisette.
Okay, find something fun. Got it. Step 2.
Listen once at normal speed. Just play it through.
No pausing, no dictionary.
None. 0.
Yeah.
Your only goal on this first listen is to get the general idea, the gist. What's the main topic? Who's talking? What's the overall feeling? Train yourself to be okay with not understanding everything. Tolerate the ambiguity.
Okay, first pass is just for the big picture. Then step 3.
Listen again, but this time, slow it down. Use the speed setting on your podcast app. Set it to 0.75x.
The slow motion replay. Why 0.75, not 0.5?
Good question. 0.5x often sounds too distorted, kind of robotic. But 0.75x is usually slow enough that you can start hearing how words connect and blend together without losing the natural rhythm completely. You know those illusions where sounds get dropped, like in next door instead of next door?
Right, or comfortable instead of comfortable.
Exactly. At normal speed, those just fly by as noise.
Yeah.
At 0.75x, your brain has a chance to actually register them, to hear, oh, that's how they say that. You're decoding the shortcuts.
Okay, so the slow pass is for analyzing those connections. Makes sense. Then step 4.
Immediately listen again, back at full speed, 1.0x.
Why jump right
This is crucial because you've just identified those tricky connections and sound patterns in the slow version. Listening again at normal speed right away will feel surprisingly clearer. Your ears are primed. You'll catch more. It's like you've unlocked a new level of recognition. This builds agility.
So normal speed for gist, slow speed for analysis, normal speed again for reinforcement. Got it. And the final step, step 5.
Shadowing. This one's active. Choose a short segment, maybe just 30 seconds, something you found interesting or maybe a bit challenging.
And shadow means?
Repeat what you hear as you hear it. Try to match the speaker's speed, rhythm, and intonation exactly. You can pause and replay the segment a few times.
So you're speaking along with the recording?
Yes, or immediately after. This connects your ear, your brain, and your mouth. It forces your mouth muscles to move at native speed, which helps your brain process sounds at that speed too. It's muscle memory for speech patterns, boosts listening and speaking rhythm.
That 5-step routine sounds really solid. Listen normal, listen slow, listen normal, then shadow.
Okay,
Sure.
but this is mostly about understanding what you hear. What about when it's your turn to speak? That freeze moment.
Yes, the dreaded freeze. That's the second critical skill we need to train. Thinking faster in English.
Because the freeze happens when your brain is stuck translating, right? Here, English translate to native think and native translating back to English speak.
Precisely. That multi-step process creates that awful lag. It kills the flow of conversation. Podcasts can help break that cycle.
By forcing direct connections.
Exactly. It's about training your brain to link ideas and concepts directly to English phrases or chunks, bypassing your native language altogether.
Can you give an example? Sure. Take a common idiom, like, let's call it a day. When you hear that repeatedly in context within podcasts, maybe someone wrapping up a meeting or finishing a project.
Your brain stops trying to translate call plus it plus a plus day, literally.
Right. And instead, it creates a direct link. Let's call it a day, means finish work activity. The sound pattern connects straight to the concept. Podcasts provide that massive input of contextualized phrases needed to build those direct connections.
So it's about learning phrases and chunks as single units of meaning.
Yes. Thinking in phrases, not just individual words. Another example, maybe you know what I mean, a lot. After hearing it maybe 20 times in different podcast conversations, your brain doesn't analyze it grammatically anymore. It just intuitively grasps, oh, that means, do you understand?
Yeah.
Or are you following me? It moves from conscious analysis to automatic intuition.
Okay, so massive exposure through podcasts helps build that intuitive, direct understanding. What are some specific strategies listeners can use while listening to actively train this faster thinking?
Good question. The sources suggest several smart strategies. Strategy 1, predict before you listen.
How does that help thinking speed?
Look at the podcast episode title or the description. Take 10 seconds to guess what topics and maybe even what vocabulary might come up. If the title is negotiating your salary, your brain preemptively activates words like raise, offer, benefits, counteroffer.
So when those words actually appear in the audio, your brain recognizes them faster because it was already primed.
Exactly. It reduces processing load. Strategy 2, use chunk training. This builds on what we just discussed.
Meaning actively listen for phrases, not single words.
Yes. Consciously try to hear groups of words as single units of meaning. Don't mentally process, I want to go to the store. Train your ear to catch, I want to go in the store, as one chunk.
Because that's how native speakers talk and think.
Right. We process language in chunks, so you need to train your listening that way. Strategy 3. Focus intensely on keywords.
Filtering out the noise.
Pretty much. In fast speech, you won't catch everything. Train yourself to latch onto the most important words, usually nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, the core message carriers.
Like if someone says quickly, so yeah, yesterday's meeting about the project launch, it's been delayed, probably indefinitely.
Your brain should grab yesterday meeting.project.delayed indefinitely. You get the main idea, even if the filler words were a blur. It's like developing English radar, locking onto the critical signals.
Okay, radar on for keywords. Strategy 4.
Visualize what you hear. Create a mental movie.
How does seeing pictures in my head speed up my thinking?
It creates another pathway for understanding and memory. If the podcast tells a story about someone walking on a beach, actually picture the beach, the sand, the waves. You're connecting the English words directly to images and concepts, again, bypassing translation. It makes comprehension deeper and faster.
Makes sense. Less abstract processing. And strategy 5, this one seems really active.
It is. Talk back to the podcast.
Seriously, just talk to my phone.
Yeah. When a host asks a question, even a rhetorical one, or shares an opinion you agree or disagree with, pause the podcast and say your response out loud. Just a sentence or two.
What does that achieve?
It bridges the gap between passive listening and active production. You're forcing yourself to retrieve English vocabulary and form sentences quickly in response to something you just heard. It combats the freeze by practicing real-time formulation. It turns listening into thinking practice.
Okay, those are great strategies. Predict, chunk, keywords, visualize, talk back. Now, you mentioned something a bit more intense, the speed shock.
Ah, yes. This is like interval training for your ears.
Sounds painful.
A little challenging, maybe. Once a week, maybe for 5-10 minutes. Deliberately listen to a podcast episode at 1.25x or even 1.5x speed.
Whoa, isn't that just going to sound like chipmunks? Will I understand anything?
Probably not much at first. That's not the main point. The point is to force your brain to try and process information at that accelerated rate. It's like pushing your limit.
Like lifting heavier weights than usual.
Exactly. Or running with weights on, like we talked about. It forces your brain to adapt, to work harder just to keep up, even if it's failing.
Okay, so I endure 10 minutes of super fast chatter. Then what?
Then, the next time you listen to any podcast at normal, 1.0x speed.
Ah, it suddenly feels slow, manageable, easy even.
Precisely. You've stretched your brain's processing capacity. Regular 1.0x speed now feels comfortable because you've briefly trained at a much higher intensity. It builds mental flexibility and reduces panic when you encounter genuinely fast speakers.
That's a clever technique. The run with weights analogy really works there. So how does all this training, the routine, the strategies, the speed shock translate to real-world confidence, like, say, in a job interview?
Okay, great example. Interviewer speaks quickly, maybe has an accent you're not used to. The untrained brain might panic, freeze, miss key information, ask them to repeat constantly.
Which doesn't create the best impression.
Right. But the trained brain, it kicks into gear. It doesn't panic if it misses a word. It uses context comprehension. It catches the key words. It understands the tone. Is the interviewer encouraging, skeptical? It processes the gist quickly.
And because you've practiced talking back, you can formulate your answer more quickly and confidently, even if you didn't catch 100% of the question.
Exactly. You can respond to the core of what was asked, showing you understood the main point. That's what fluency looks like in the real world. It's not about perfection. It's about confident communication and comprehension, even with imperfections.
So fluency isn't zero mistakes, it's resilience. The ability to keep the conversation flowing.
I think that's a great way to put it. Resilience, confidence, knowing you can handle the speed.
How will listeners know they're making progress? What are the signs?
Oh, you'll notice things. You'll find yourself understanding more of fast conversations without consciously trying. You might start predicting what someone's going to say next, finishing their sentences in your head.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. You'll catch jokes or sarcasm or idioms much faster without that pause for analysis. And crucially, the time it takes you to think of a response in English will shrink. That translation step starts to fade away.
And eventually, English just becomes part of the background noise of your life in a good way?
That's the ultimate goal, really, making English a habit, not a subject. You're listening while you're commuting or cooking or working out. It's just There, you're staying in English mode.
So to wrap up, the big takeaway from our sources seems to be consistency and active engagement. Use podcasts, use the routine, use the strategies.
Absolutely. It's about making that instant connection between sound and meaning, bypassing translation. Make English a habit.
Keep pushing yourself. Use that 5-step routine. Try the strategies like talking back, maybe even brave the speed shock once a week. Remember, you're rewiring your brain while just living your life.
Keep at it until you hit that point where fast English isn't intimidating anymore.
Yeah, where it doesn't scare you, it actually excites you. Because you know you can handle it. That, I think, is when you know you've truly stepped into natural, unstoppable fluency. Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're really digging into something fundamental about language learning. We've spent ages focusing on, vocabulary lists, grammar rules, all that stuff. But we've looked at a whole pile of sources, and they all kind of point to the same thing. Knowing all the words means nothing if you're just too scared to actually speak. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. How do we unlock that speaking confidence? How can listening, actually just listening to the right things, turn that paralyzing fear into just talking? Fearless expression.
Yeah, that fear, that anxiety is the real ceiling for so many learners, isn't it?
Yeah.
Confidence, well, it's this invisible thing, this force, really. It's what turns the stuff you know up here into actual communication out there. You could have, 1,000 perfect words lined up. But if you hesitate, even for a split second, that message just kind of vanishes into self-doubt. So we really need to zero in on building that inner conviction, the thing that lets you use the words you have freely, imperfectly even, and crucially now.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that barrier. Because you're right, it's not really about the technical side, the language itself. It's deeper, psychological. The real problem isn't the grammar mistakes you might make. It's the feel of being judged for them. It's that little voice inside, isn't it? Constantly going, oh no, what if I use the wrong word? Or they're going to laugh at my accent.
And what does that voice do? It makes you silent. We see this all the time. People who can follow really complex English, when they're listening, understand everything. But then it's their turn to say something, even something simple, and they clam up. It's that tiny whisper saying, nope, not ready yet. Wait, learn more first.
But here's the kicker, isn't it? What the sources make really clear. That waiting. It never ends. Nobody ever feels perfectly ready. Confidence isn't something you achieve before you start speaking. It's what happens because you start speaking. It's a result, not a prerequisite. You got to make the first move, even with that voice screaming, stop.
Exactly. And that's precisely why listening to, real world stuff like podcasts, for instance, is such a game changer against this whole perfection myth. Think about textbook dialogues. They're so clean, so neat.
Yeah, unnaturally perfect.
Right. And they set this totally unrealistic bar. But when you listen to, actual people talking, you hear the messiness. Everyone does it. Native speakers pause, they say, and they repeat words, these fillers,
They'll even make mistakes sometimes.
Absolutely. They make mistakes too. And hearing that is incredibly powerful.
So the power is just exposure, pulling back the curtain on how people actually talk.
That's it. When your brain hears all those, let's call them imperfections, those human moments, it starts to realize that this impossible standard of perfection you set for yourself is just made up. It's arbitrary. And that is the mindset shift we're aiming for. You stop chasing this idea of a flawless performance.
Yeah.
And you start chasing connection instead. Real, authentic connection. Confidence, then, becomes the courage to reach out, to connect, not the demand to be perfect doing it.
Okay, so if fear is the enemy and listening helps dismantle that fear, how does the daily listening part actively build confidence? You mentioned familiarity. How did that turn into, actually speaking?
It's about cognitive pattern recognition. It sounds technical, but it's simple. When you listen every day, your brain isn't just picking up new words, it's learning the rhythm, the flow, the structure of how conversations actually work. It's almost like chunking information, Your brain starts recognizing whole conversational bits.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, like how people greet each other naturally, how they interrupt politely or even sometimes impolitely, how they change the subject, how they laugh, how they disagree, how they tell a story.
Okay, so your brain is absorbing these templates almost.
Yeah. These patterns. And the effect of that familiarity, it's huge.
Because when you're finally in a real conversation, your brain isn't just staring at a blank page trying to invent everything from scratch.
Exactly. That's the whole mechanism. When you finally open your mouth to speak, it doesn't feel totally alien or terrifying because your brain's already encountered hundreds, maybe thousands of examples of similar exchanges. It's like you've been silently training your social muscles.
Right, like mental rehearsals you didn't even know you were doing.
Precisely. You've already heard how people handle an awkward pause or react to a surprising comment or navigate a tricky point.
So, okay, the big takeaway here is that confident speakers aren't just made in classrooms drilling grammar. They emerge from massive exposure, from just letting the language wash over them until it feels normal.
Normal, that's the word. It normalizes the act of speaking English.
And that's the real goal, isn't it? Confidence isn't necessarily about speaking like technically better English with perfect grammar every time. It's about feeling that English is yours, that it belongs to you just as much as to anyone else.
Yes, that sense of ownership.
And that feeling is what lets you finally relax into the conversation, enjoy it, instead of constantly being your own harsh critic, policing every single word.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually have a great story from the sources that illustrates this perfectly. There was this listener, Adil from Pakistan. He shared his experience. He said he felt like two completely different people. When listening, he could understand really complex stuff, tech discussions, nuanced arguments.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
But the second someone, especially a native speaker, asked him even a simple question, he'd just freeze completely.
Oh, man, I know that feeling. It's like your brain just shuts down.
Exactly. He described it as physical. His internal monologue just went straight to failure, and his voice just wouldn't come out.
That is so common and so painful. So what did they suggest? What was the fix?
It was a really simple private challenge. Every single morning, he had to listen to one short podcast, like 10 minutes, something engaging a story, maybe something motivational.
Okay, 10 minutes, doable.
Then right after listening, he had to spend 3 minutes summarizing what he heard out loud to himself in his own words.
The talking to yourself part, that always feels weird at first, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. He definitely said it felt weird. That's the first hurdle, that self-consciousness. Even when you're alone, this is strange.
Right.
But he stuck with it. And after just 2 weeks, only 2 weeks of forcing himself through that private rehearsal, the change was massive. His hesitation, it just evaporated.
Yeah.
He said when someone spoke English to him after that, his brain didn't hit the panic button anymore. It felt familiar. Like he already practiced that exact kind of moment or something really close to it 100 times over in his head in private.
Wow. So the podcasts weren't just input, they were fuel for the rehearsal.
Exactly. They built the mental muscle memory. That private practice paved the way for public confidence.
That mental rehearsal idea is so key. I mean, this leads perfectly into a really practical technique we found in the sources, something listeners can actually do. It's called the voice mirror method. But hang on, before we lay out the steps, I gotta ask. If I'm already terrified of how my English sounds to other people, isn't recording myself and listening back like the ultimate cringe, just me alone judging my own voice, that sounds awful. How do the sources justify putting yourself through that?
That's a really fair question, and a crucial one. The justification is this. The deepest fear often isn't just of speaking badly, it's of hearing yourself sound bad. It's confronting your own perceived flaws. The voice mirror flips that. The point isn't to find fault or judge. It's actually about discovering the strength, the uniqueness, the reality of your own voice. The sources are really strong on this. You have to recognize the power you already possess in your own voice before you can use it confidently in the world. It's about acceptance and ownership first.
Okay, I can see that. Shifting from judgment to discovery. I'm willing to buy into the why. So what are the actual steps? How does it work?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. Step 1. Pick a short chunk of a podcast you like, maybe just a minute, something with a nice rhythm or energy. Listen really closely.
Got it. 1 minute. Listen hard.
Step 2. Right after listening, repeat that same segment out loud. Try to capture the speaker's energy, their intonation, but importantly, do it in your natural accent and your tone. Don't try to be a perfect mimic.
Okay, repeat it in my own voice, my own accent.
Step 3. Now, record yourself saying those same lines again. Just hit record on your phone.
All right, the recording part. Deep breath.
And step 4, this is the critical part. Compare the two recordings, the original podcast clip and your recording.
Okay, comparison time. What am I actually listening for? Am I trying to spot all my mistakes?
No, absolutely not the point. You are not listening to criticize your accent or hunt for errors. Forget that. You're listening for other things. Rhythm. Where does the original speaker speed up or slow down? Tone. What's the emotion? Emphasis. Which words do they stress? Pauses. Where do the natural breaks fall?
Ah, okay. So it's about the musicality, the delivery, not just the words.
Exactly. The goal is a realization. You start to hear the unique sound, the specific emotion, the strength in your own voice. You realize it is capable of carrying meaning, of sounding compelling, just as it is. That realization, that's what shifts things. Confidence doesn't bloom when you finally sound like a native speaker clone. It blooms when you start to own and appreciate the voice you actually have.
Owning your voice. That ties right into the identity shift, doesn't it? Moving from thinking, I'm learning English, to actually stating, I speak English.
Precisely. That internal identity shift is fundamental. Confidence really does start there. If you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm just a learner, you're basically giving yourself permission to stay hesitant, right? You're implying you're not quite there yet. But the truth is, if you are speaking, even a little, even imperfectly, you are a speaker, period. That's the reality you need to anchor yourself in.
I really like that framing. Okay, so for everyone listening who wants to make that shift starting today, let's boil this down. Can we create a quick, 5-step daily plan using podcasts to build this confidence?
Yeah, let's make it super practical, routine focused. Okay, step 1, listen every morning. Seriously, just 10 minutes. Find something engaging. Stories work really well to get your brain switched into English mode. Activate those familiarity patterns we talked about.
Step 2, shadow one sentence. While you're listening, pick just one sentence that jumps out at you, maybe one with good energy. Repeat it out loud, right away, trying to match the speaker's intonation. That physical act of speaking breaks the ice for the day.
Step 3, speak for 1 minute. Immediately after your 10 minutes of listening, just talk for 60 seconds. Summarize what you heard, give your opinion, whatever. Just talk. Don't worry about perfection. Don't self-edit. The goal is just flow, getting thoughts out.
Step 4, record and listen. Okay, this is the voice mirror part. Maybe not every day, maybe just 3 times a week to start. Yes, it might feel weird initially, but recording is how you hear your progress over time. It's concrete proof, and that reinforces the habit like nothing else.
And finally, step 5, celebrate your voice. Every time you do this little routine, consciously acknowledge it. Just say to yourself, okay, I did it. I spoke English today. I used my voice. Confidence is built on these tiny recognized wins. Accumulate them.
This feels really manageable. Okay, let's go a bit deeper now into the psychology. The sources talk about emotional confidence. How does listening to podcasts build that?
It's about the content itself, often. When you listen to real conversations, real stories, you hear people talking about their struggles, their doubts, their dreams, their everyday screw-ups.
You hear their vulnerability.
Exactly. It's not just language input. It's exposure to shared humanity. And that's incredibly powerful for confidence. When you hear native speakers or fluent speakers talking about their own anxieties or admitting they don't know something, you start to realize everyone is just human.
And that stops you feeling less than, like you're somehow deficient because English is your second language.
Precisely. It dismantles that feeling of intellectual inferiority.
Right.
You internalize the truth that knowing English or not knowing it perfectly isn't a measure of your intelligence or your worth as a person.
It's just a tool for connection.
Right. Which helps us clearly see the difference the sources point out between, let's call it fake confidence and real confidence.
Okay, what's the difference?
Fake confidence is basically perfectionism in disguise. It's that voice saying, I'll speak, eventually, when I'm perfect, when I know everything. It's waiting for a state that never arrives. It's a self-made prison.
And real confidence.
Real confidence is the courage to act despite imperfection. It's the voice that says, I'm speaking because I'm learning. I'm speaking now. It means taking action even when you feel that little knot of nervousness in your stomach. It's about doing it scared.
Doing it scared. I like that. And this creates a positive feedback loop, right? The sources call it the confidence loop.
Exactly. Each step fuels the next one. It goes like this. You listen more, which builds familiarity and understanding that makes you more willing to speak even a little, which activates that mental muscle memory we talked about.
Okay.
Speaking, even imperfectly, leads to improvement, maybe in fluency or finding the right word faster.
Right.
That improvement makes you feel more confident, reinforcing that I speak English identity.
And that confidence makes you want to.
Listen more, dive deeper, engage more. The whole cycle repeats, building momentum. Confidence is built in motion, not in silent study.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so pulling this all together, the final synthesis seems to be, the more you understand, the more context, flow, and patterns you absorb from listening, the less you fear.
Yes. Listening creates a kind of emotional safety net. It calms the anxiety, and that calm is what frees your voice.
Okay, so let's leave everyone listening with a final, maybe slightly provocative thought and a challenge. We're calling it the Speak Before You're Ready challenge. It's simple. Tomorrow, after you do your 10 minutes of listening, don't plan what you're going to say. Don't look up words. Don't rehearse in your head. Just open your mouth and talk for 1 full minute about what you just heard. Just leap.
That's the essence of it, that little leap, because the faster you force yourself to speak before you feel 100% ready, paradoxically, the faster you actually become ready. Remember, the goal isn't this imaginary perfect English. That's a mirage. The real goal is brave English, because brave English, imperfect English, is the kind that actually connects you to people, opens doors, and genuinely changes your life.
So if you're listening to this and you still feel that not a fear about speaking, just take a breath. And know this, just by being on this journey, by trying, you're already miles ahead of so many people who never even start. So keep hitting play on those podcasts. Keep listening, because you're not just training your brain with words, you're training your heart to trust your own voice. And that trust is what leads eventually to a fearless voice that truly belongs in the English-speaking world. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling, well, what feels like the true final frontier for a lot of English learners. Moving past just listening or, studying vocab lists and actually achieving that real-life fluency, that sweet spot where conversation just flows naturally.
Exactly. And we're not aiming for some kind of perfect textbook English here. That's not the goal. It isn't about sounding like a robot reciting grammar rules. It's about confident, adaptable English, the kind you really need when, say, a colleague suddenly asks your opinion, or you're meeting new people, situations where you need quick, natural responses.
Right. So we've pulled together some fantastic sources today, all focused on one thing: how to turn the time you already spend listening to podcasts into real, active speaking power. Our mission: to unpack the most actionable techniques so you can finally make that leap.
Okay, let's dive in. The core idea that comes through in these sources is really interesting. They frame listening time as training in a kind of language flight simulator.
Oh, I love that metaphor, because it really gets at the difference, doesn't it, between learning something in theory and actually doing it. Studying vocabulary, that's like a closed book test. But stepping into a real conversation, that's an open-air challenge. And like our sources point out, you absolutely cannot pause or rewind.
Nope, no rewind button in real life.
Right.
And that's where the real learning happens, under a bit of pressure. And that's precisely why listening is such a critical bridge. Face-to-face, or even just hearing natural conversation, it reveals what the sources call the living language.
The living language. Okay.
Yeah, you're processing so much more than just the words, the meaning. You're taking in the whole ecosystem of English communication. The pace, the tone shifts, those little pauses that signal different things, common ways of agreeing or showing frustration.
And this works so well because, as the sources suggest, a lot of it happens subconsciously, right? You're not sitting there actively trying to memorize conjugation tables or anything.
Exactly right. Your brain's just absorbing data points constantly every day you listen. Think of it like your mind is logging countless tiny patterns. Oh, okay, that's how they show they're a bit skeptical. That's how you interrupt politely. Or, and this is a big one, that's how they smoothly shift from one topic to another.
It's that silent training that really kicks in when you're put on the spot. I think anyone learning a language knows that feeling, that moment of panic,
Right.
that horrible frozen pause where your brain is frantically trying to translate from your native language into English before you can say anything.
Yeah, the sources actually call that cognitive drag. It's slow, inefficient, and honestly exhausting. But by consistently exposing yourself to these native conversational patterns through listening, your mind gradually stops relying on that clunky translation loop.
So it becomes more automatic.
Precisely. When a real situation comes up, your brain just retrieves the appropriate pattern. Maybe it's a phrase, a certain tone, a sentence structure, and you respond naturally, without that painful stutter or delay. That moment when you shift from translating to just automatically recalling and using the pattern. That's the feeling of fluency.
That automaticity, yeah, that's the dream. Okay, but if we're training to speak, how do we actually convert all that passive listening into active output? We need some mechanics, and the sources offer some really brilliant techniques. Let's start with one that needs zero feedback from anyone else. the private conversation trick.
Right. This one's great because it tackles the single biggest hurdle for practicing speaking, that fear of being judged. The mechanism is super simple but really effective. After you listen to a bit of a podcast, just hit pause. And if a host asks a question in the podcast, maybe something open-ended like, what's your take on the future of remote work? You actually answer it out to yourself.
Okay, just talking to yourself, basically.
Yeah. But the sources really stress how vital this private, no judgment zone is for building that initial confidence. You're literally forcing your brain to flex its spontaneous speaking muscles in English. You can stumble, you can stop, restart, sound totally clunky. It doesn't matter. Nobody's listening. The goal here is just volume and speed of output, getting used to forming thoughts in English on the fly.
But hang on, doesn't practicing alone risk maybe, cementing bad habits if there's no one to correct you? That's something the sources must address.
They do, yeah. And the consensus seems to be that at this initial stage, the benefit of just overcoming the hesitation, of breaking that silence barrier, far outweighs the risk of making a few mistakes. You're training the act of speaking first, and confidence needs to come before perfect correctness.
Right, okay. Build the confidence, then refine. Makes sense. And as you do that, as you practice that spontaneous output, you naturally start tuning into something else the sources highlight, the music of conversation.
Yes. The rhythm, the flow, which you could argue is maybe even more important for sounding fluent than just having a huge vocabulary. You know, that choppy, unnatural speech, it really marks someone as struggling, even if they know advanced words.
Fluency feels smooth.
Exactly. Fluency really is about rhythm and how you respond. Podcasts are amazing for teaching this. They show you exactly when native speakers pause, how loud they might laugh at something, how they use those small connecting words.
Yeah.
The ones that keep the energy of the conversation going.
You mean like natural connectors? That's what the sources call them, right?
That's the term, yeah. And they're the lifeblood of real dialogue. They aren't just filler, they're functional. When you start sprinkling in phrases like, oh, really? To show surprise, or I totally get what you mean, for agreement. Or even something like, that's interesting, but have you considered, to offer a counterpoint. You instantly sound more dynamic, more engaged.
Less like you're reading from a script or just waiting for your turn to speak.
Precisely. You're showing you're present in the conversation. This ties back to what the sources mention about learning to express emotional states, skepticism, excitement, whatever, through English phrasing and tone, not just words.
Okay, so let's move to a technique designed specifically to tackle that reaction delay, that hesitation. The sources call it imitation practice, but frame it as reaction speed training. How does that work?
So for this one, you need to find a short, clear dialogue between two people in a podcast. Maybe just a 30, 45-second back and forth. Could be a host and a guest, for example. Find a clean exchange.
Okay, got the clip. Then what?
You play the first person's line. Let's say it's host A asking a question. You hit pause immediately after, and then you respond right away, as if you were the second person, guest B. But, and this is crucial, you respond in your own words. You're not just parroting their exact line. You're genuinely answering the question or reacting to the comment.
Ah, okay. So it forces you to process and react immediately, contextually. What should you be focusing on when you do that, beyond just getting the words out?
Focus on the prosody, the intonation, the stress patterns. If host A asks the question with a curious tone, try to mirror that kind of feeling in your response. You're training your brain not just to match words, but the emotional energy of the conversation. This practice really speeds up that shift from hesitation to, well, automatic response.
That automaticity needs endurance, though, right? It's one thing to react quickly once, another to sustain it. Which brings us to the next technique, the topic-based speaking challenge. Sounds intense.
It builds flexibility and persistence. The task itself is straightforward. Once a week, pick a topic from a podcast you listen to. Could be anything, history, tech, motivation, whatever. After listening, you speak about that specific topic for 2 solid minutes without stopping.
2 minutes without stopping. What's the key rule here?
The absolute key rule, hammered home in the sources, no preparing beforehand, no memorizing. This mimics the pressure of a real conversation where you don't get prep time. And importantly, if you forget a word, which will happen, you can't just stop. You must use simpler English you already know to talk around it, to explain the concept.
Right, because you have to keep the conversation flowing. You can't just pull out a dictionary mid-meeting.
Exactly. You learn to be resourceful with the English you have. And the reason this works so well is that your brain is already primed from listening to the podcast on that topic. You've got the relevant vocabulary, the main ideas kind of floating around in there already. Forcing yourself to speak about it immediately after cements that knowledge and builds massive confidence because you know you have something to say.
So we've covered the why the flight simulator idea and the how these practical techniques. Let's talk resources. If the goal is natural, real-life English, what kinds of podcasts should people focus on for this kind of active practice?
Well, the sources emphasize that variety is good, but they do point to a few key types for targeting specific skills. First, absolutely essential, daily conversation podcasts. Shows that focus on idioms, phrasal verbs, everyday slang, cultural nuances, and small talk. These are gold mines for learning the rhythm of relaxed, spontaneous chat. Honestly, that's often the hardest kind of English to really master.
Okay, conversational stuff. What else?
Second, they recommend motivational or storytelling podcasts. Think shows like The Moth or anything where people share personal narratives. Listening to these helps you practice understanding and eventually using narrative drive. How to sequence events, build a little emotional tension, express empathy, share personal opinions clearly. Invaluable skills for everything from job interviews to just telling a good story to friends.
Makes sense. And the third type.
Third, don't skip professional or business English podcasts. These are crucial for learning how to switch registers. You need to know how to sound assertive but polite in a meeting, how to summarize complex information clearly, how to use that formal yet confident language common in workplaces, learning the difference between phrasing an email request effectively and just shooting the breeze by the coffee machine, that ability to switch. That's real fluency.
And it's worth repeating what the sources say about comprehension levels, right? You don't need to understand 100% of everything you listen to.
Oh, absolutely not. That's a trap. The goal is exposure, not perfection. The sources generally suggest that even if you only grasp, say, 70% of what's being said, that's plenty. It's enough to train your ear, to let your brain start recognizing those patterns we talked about. If you wait until you understand every single word, you'll honestly never start practicing. Exposure builds comfort, and comfort really is the engine that drives fluency.
That comfort zone becomes the launch pad then for the next logical step, actually using it with real people. After practicing these techniques for a few weeks, the sources strongly suggest moving into real-world interaction.
Yes, this is where the training wheels come off, so to speak. The recommendation is to deliberately seek out and join English-speaking communities. Could be online discussion forums, maybe specific Telegram chats or Discord servers focused on topics you like, topics you've been listening to podcasts about.
So you use the podcast content as a natural entry point for conversation.
Exactly. When you jump into a discussion about a podcast episode you just listened to and really thought about, you're forced to synthesize your thoughts quickly, share your opinions, maybe defend them a little, manage the back and forth with a real person. That is active communication in its purest form.
What I find really fascinating is how the sources connect all these practical techniques back to something deeper, the emotional component of language. Fluency isn't just technical skill, it's social, it's emotional.
It really is all about connection, isn't it? When you listen to podcasts where people are being genuinely vulnerable, sharing failures, dreams, laughing with comfort, genuinely, you start to internalize the emotional context behind the English words.
Yeah, like you learn the subtle difference between someone saying, "I'm fine" in a flat tone versus "I'm fine" with real enthusiasm.
Precisely. And that process trains your emotional intelligence in English. You learn how to express empathy convincingly, or show excitement appropriately, or convey curiosity in a way that invites a good response. It makes you a much warmer, more interesting person to talk to. Tone completely changes meaning, and podcasts give you a front row seat to see how that works constantly.
This all seems to lead towards what the sources call the podcast mindset, which sounds intriguing. What is that?
It's essentially an instruction, a mindset shift. Stop being afraid of making mistakes in English, and instead start playing with the language.
Playing with it? How so?
Start seeing everyday interactions as opportunities for dynamic exchange. Adopt the mindset of a great podcast host. Always ready to talk, to share, yes, but crucially, ready to listen actively and respond genuinely.
So when you meet new people, instead of worrying about perfect grammar,
try imagining them as interesting guests on your own life's little show. It shifts the focus from, I must impress them, to, I want to understand them. I need to ask good questions, show real curiosity, react naturally. That playful curiosity, that genuine interest in the other person, it just dissolves the self-consciousness that often blocks fluency.
That reframing makes a lot of sense. It takes the pressure off you and puts the focus on the connection.
And when you prioritize listening and reacting naturally, the right words and grammar often just follow the flow more easily.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. To make sure everyone listening can actually put this into practice, let's wrap up with a really concrete daily fluency routine. This is drawn straight from the source material, designed to distribute the practice effectively throughout the day.
Okay, let's break it down. Morning, maybe 10 minutes. Prime your brain. Listen to one podcast episode, could be while getting ready, commuting, whatever. The sources suggest this early exposure kind of sets your brain to an English mode for the day.
Then, afternoon, just 5 minutes. Take a brief pause sometime during your day for that private conversation trick. Pick 1 or 2 phrases you heard, maybe some of those natural connectors we talked about, and say them aloud. Answer a question from the podcast. Cement the learning.
And finally, evening, another quick 5 minutes. Do a mini topic-based speaking challenge. Speak for just 1 minute about something you learned or found interesting from your listening that day. No stopping, talk around forgotten words, build that rapid retrieval muscle.
And the weekly goal to tie it all together.
Dedicate maybe an hour, if you can, sometime during the week, to actually using it. Join one online discussion, find a conversation partner, talk about a podcast episode you enjoyed. Force that knowledge into active, real-time use.
Got it. Listen, practice privately, challenge yourself, then interact.
And remember, variety keeps it fresh. Some days, tackle dense, serious topics. Other days, listen to comedy podcasts, lighthearted chats. Learning English this way should feel like discovering new ideas and meeting interesting voices, not like doing homework.
So, the final takeaway for you, the listener, from all these sources, it's quite profound, actually. Fluency doesn't really come from studying harder in the traditional sense. It comes from living with the language.
Yeah. If you stick with a routine like this, listening actively, practicing speaking privately, challenging yourself, and then engaging with others, you'll eventually hit a point where English stops feeling like something you actively learn, something separate you have to focus on. It just becomes part of how you live, how you think, how you connect.
And that moment, listeners, when English isn't something you learn anymore, but something you live, that is the moment you've truly become fluent. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
If you've made it this far, congratulations. You didn't just listen to English. You lived it. That's what real progress feels like. Now, it's your turn to take this energy forward. Start listening to one English podcast every day, even if it's just 10 minutes. Repeat what you hear, speak your thoughts aloud, and make English a natural part of your world. Every time you press play, you're not just improving your language, you're building confidence, mindset, and fluency that lasts a lifetime. If this session inspired you, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss your next English growth episode. And tell us in the comments. Backhand index pointing right, which podcast are you going to start learning with today? Remember, fluency isn't built in classrooms. It's built in moments like this, when you decide to keep listening, keep speaking, and keep growing. Because your English journey doesn't start tomorrow. It starts right now.